Good afternoon. It is Thursday, October 7th at 1 o'clock. This is the regular meeting of the Library and Observatory Board, the Housing Authority Board, and the City Council representing the Redevelopment Successor Agency. The flag salute will be led by our Director of Public Works, Brian Stendel.
Join me in honoring our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Christy. May we have roll call, please?
Of course. Councilmember Hobart.
Here.
Councilmember Kite.
Here.
Councilmember Smotrich. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Townsend.
Here.
Mayor Weil.
Here. The first item on our agenda today is a presentation by the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce, and it's an update. As they walk up here, I think it's both Matt Johnson and Candy Stice, who have done a stellar job. We welcome you both. Matt, all yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, council members and staff. As your chairman of your Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce, I am just here to give a very, very, very big thank you for what not only this council, but the entire staff has done through this Great Plates program. We're not done with this pandemic yet. We've still got some lingering effects. We're still working through vaccinations and masks and things like that. But had it not been for the swift approvals by the council members and the action of the staff, some of these restaurants might not be here today. Katie Stice has a program for you. She's going to talk about that. We also have some of the restaurants who were recipients of your help. They wanted to thank you as well. So with no further ado, Katie Stice, the president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Hello. Mayor Weil, council members, city staff, guests here today and virtually. My name is Katie Stice, CEO of the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce, and a few weeks ago we had about 18 of the 21 Great Plates restaurateurs attend council meeting to share their thanks, and a few were unable to attend. They wanted to take time today to add their words of gratitude for a program which made significant impact on their business through this crisis. Over 380,000 meals, over $8 million directly expended into the local economy, protecting jobs that would likely have been lost. The city paid restaurants weekly and anticipates receiving 100% reimbursement from FEMA. It's absolutely incredible what you all did. Today I'd like to welcome, to start off, Maddie Botello of Wally's Desert Turtle.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I am Yes from Wally's Desert Turtle. I just took it over this year from my family, and I actually helped run the whole Great Plates program. I even delivered most of the meals myself for a portion of the time. We just wanted to thank you so much because it helped keep our business alive. We were actually open for the first summer ever in our 43 years, and it was only because of Great Plates, and it helped my staff going. We had our chef there, we had my sister involved, and we had about 6 of our other employees work. So we got to put them back to work and get them creative in ability to put new menus together that we don't normally do. We normally do fine dining, you know our menu, I'm sure. And so they got to get really creative, and it was an amazing experience. Also, when I got to deliver, it was fantastic to meet all of our, fellow Rancho Mirage residents. They were so excited and so happy to receive the food, and it was honestly just so rewarding for me to be able to experience the program. So I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming today, and
you're welcome.
And lots of luck in your new position. I mean,
thank you.
You've gotten a fair amount of publicity that you're going to be carrying on the family tradition.
Thank you.
Needless to say, you have made, and the restaurant have made, an indelible mark in the history of our city in fine dining, and we're just delighted that you're carrying on in the family tradition.
Thank you. I'm very excited for the opportunity and to carry on, you know, what my grandfather started here and to be in Rancho Mirage. So there's not very many of us left, and we're going to continue to stay.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hello. A little nervous. First time ever being up in front of a lot of people. But I really just have to, I'm really grateful for what you guys did. This was a dream of mine to own a restaurant. And, excuse me.
Take your time. We got plenty of time.
Yeah. Through the pandemic, there was times where when it all happened, I thought maybe we weren't gonna make it, and then like a miracle, you know, we get a call from Isaiah, and he tells us, "Hey, there's this program going on. We'd love for you guys to be part of it." And so we ended up being part of it, and I want to say I know that was just a miracle for us. It kept us going. It kept us in the fight, and this was a long dream of mine and of my family's, and we were able to still be here for you guys in Rancho Mirage. And just want to say thank you very much, guys. And sorry about getting so emotional. Thank you. Thank you for real.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Andy Delgado from Las Casuas Nuevas. I came last time to say thank you, and when I got the email, you know, of course, I wanted to come in again. Myself and I'm sure all the restaurants feel really, you know, the gratitude just for everything, and just, you know, saying thank you isn't enough, you know, so as much as we can, just thank you for that, and just shows the understanding of the support that the businesses needed during that time, being the only city in the Valley to really put forth that. I know the other restaurants in other cities didn't have the opportunity because their cities weren't so supportive, and that's, you know, means the world to all the restaurant community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's pretty powerful to see what you've all done. Thank you again for administering the program. Every business, needless to say, is just thrilled to have a location here in Rancho Mirage. We also want to extend a thank you on behalf of the entire business community for the Food Access Program, which was also launched very early on, bringing $286,000 in grant dollars to restaurants to help them stay open, where residents would have access to food at the time when grocery store shelves were low. We also want to say thank you for the Small Business Support Grant Program, which supported 54 local businesses to the tune of $385,000 as well. A lot of these places would not be here without all of this support, and we can't thank you enough. We also want to extend a thank you for the no-cost COVID testing throughout the crisis and the COVID hotline 7 days a week. We are still receiving calls, as I'm sure you all are, of thanks and gratitude for everything that you all have done. And just for a quick chamber update for you, Taste of Summer Rancho Mirage happened again over this summer, albeit looking still a little bit different. We did have 20 restaurants and 20 nonprofits participating. We actually weren't sure if we should do it or not, and so we asked our restaurateurs, is this something that would be of help to you? Would you like us to do this? And they all said, please, anything would be great. So while it looked a little bit different, we were still so happy to offer it. We're hoping that next year we'll be right back on track. For the last 90 days of the year, we have more events on a slightly smaller scale, however. We have PPE for local businesses that need it, power lunches, mixers, sexual harassment prevention trainings, a shop local guide going out to about 17,000 people, and so much more. We're just thrilled to be partners with you in the economic development sector for this city. And thank you again for having us today. Take care.
Thank you, Katie. We cannot say enough about the Chamber of Commerce and the job that you do. It has just been incredible. You support the city so well. And we've made this comments before. Every time we hear the accolades from the restaurateurs that come up here, that are very emotional. Well, I must tell you that is so rewarding for us. And I've made this comment before that the gratitude and the majority of the, frankly, praise should go to staff. Isaiah on my right, Gabe a little further down, the entire staff who really administered the program, the Great Plates program, as well as the other programs. As I say, we get a lot of credit, but the credit is due to a hardworking and dedicated staff. We just can't say enough thank you to you guys for doing that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could. So the Great Plates program was one of those things that the city grabbed onto right away. The program was designed for, one, to support struggling restaurants because the restrictions in place during the pandemic especially hit them very hard, and also to provide safe access to food for at-risk seniors in our community. So it's kind of a win-win from the city's standpoint. But I would like to take a second just to acknowledge the restaurants that participated. I just want to thank you guys. We probably had the best program in the state. Our food quality was second to none. We followed all the dietary restrictions that people had. We were delivering 3 meals a day. It ended up being over 380,000 meals during the term of this program directly to at-risk seniors. We had some pretty powerful thank you testimonies from the participants, and most of them, one of the things that they enjoyed the most was when they'd get their deliveries. And it was many of the restaurant owners that were doing this delivery to the participants themselves, and they established those relationships. And now they're going to these restaurants and supporting these restaurants and continuing that relationship. We did field a few calls of people saying, can I get Wally's for dinner every night? So to all of our restaurants, you had to pivot. You were struggling. We were all trying to understand what was going on, but you guys helped us make a fantastic program, and you really benefited the at-risk seniors in our community. So thank you so much to our restaurants that all had to work together. We had to provide meal rotation, nutritious meals, dietary restrictions for a participant class that always had some sort of turnover. And the restaurants just did a fantastic job working together and making this program what it was. So the city does on our website have the list of the participating restaurants. So I hope if you're hearing this, you take the opportunity to go visit one of those restaurants and help support them during this period. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Isaiah. The next item will be the non-agenda public comments. And Christy, do we have some cards?
Yeah, before Christy gets to our in-person audience, if you are participating remotely and you would like to make a non-agenda public comment, now's the time to do so. You would hit the raised hand button on Zoom. If you're participating by telephone, you would hit *9 to make a non-agenda public comment. Christy, do we have any speaker cards?
No, we do not.
Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to make a non-agenda public comment that did not fill out a speaker card? Okay, we'll go to our remote audience. And Brad Anderson, go ahead.
Hi, yes. My name is Brad Anderson. I currently live in the city of Rancho Mirage. I just wanted to touch on a few items really quick. I won't keep you too long. I just want to talk about transparency of the city council and the city itself. The reason I'm bringing this up is because things are placed on the agenda that is, I guess, can't be discovered of how it got on the agenda or by who. And I know other councilors, other cities have a process for the city council members to request items to be placed on the agenda. And that goes with, I'm going to transparency, I'm going to pivot, that's the key word now, is to your YouTube channel. And I know a lot of your meetings are broadcast or recorded, and you should maybe make that available other than a public records request to get that information, that would be great. If you could put that on your YouTube channels, that would be something that I'm sure a lot of people would take advantage of. But I just wanted to just pivot back to what I was talking about transparency, and I know we can research this of how certain council members have certain special interests that are able to be placed on the agenda. And I'm bringing this up because of there was several requests to change meeting times of the city council, and that's just something you could simply put on the agenda, have a vote on it, and then everybody knows how you stand, and then we can go on and move on from that. And let's see, that's about it. I noticed you talk about Great Plates. I have issues with that program. Not that it's a bad thing for the city. It's a great thing for the city, but the federal government, and of course the city, that's every citizen of the city that pays taxes, funded that. So, and the food access program, there's big, not deception, but there's issues with that too. But it's all good. It's all good for the city. And one other thing, I noticed the legal counsel, I brought this up before about contracts. I don't know if he has a renewed contract but I don't understand why there's never any RFPs put out for that. And the mayor made remarks at the last meeting about people, I guess, saying they congratulate themselves a lot, and they do, but I think people look at that as non-sincere, and that's the issue there. And that's all I have. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Thank you for your comment. Seeing no one else that wishes to speak, I'll return this back to you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Isaiah. The next item on our agenda will be council board member comments. And I will start at this time if we can have the screen, Jason, please, regarding the now is the time to protect your identity and your environment by participating in the city's free document shredding and e-waste collection event. This event will be held on this Saturday, October 9th, and available to all Rancho Mirage residents with proof of residency. The free event will take place at the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory from 8 a.m. to noon, or whenever the truck is full, whichever occurs first. All documents will be shredded on site and then recycled. Examples of documents one might shred include tax documents, bank statements, real estate transactions, and other legal or confidential papers that one does not want to put in the regular recycle bin. Shredding will be limited to 6 12-inch by 17-inch by 9-inch boxes of documents per resident. E-waste, such as old televisions, computers, monitors, cell phones, printers, household electronics, will also be collected free of charge and recycled. Residents may also drop off batteries for household devices, such as laptops, flashlights, handheld radios, and other small household electronics. Household hazardous waste, such as paint, pesticides, automobile batteries, light bulbs, will not, I emphasize, will not be accepted at this event. For more information, contact City Hall at 760-324-4511. We hope to see you there. This is a great service. It is well attended, and we're pleased to be able to do this periodically. My other comment is a personal one that we've talked about before, but this is the first time I had a personal experience like this that occurred on Monday. And we talk about all of the various scams that are going on out in the world today. And in my case, I received a call on Monday about 4 o'clock, and it said, "Hi, Grandpa, how are you?" I'm not feeling well. I've got a cold. I just came from the doctor. Now, this particular grandson of mine is a freshman at U of A. I said, that's why my voice isn't sounding so good. Great ploy. He said, Grandpa, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Can I ask you to do me a favor and please, please, and at which point this wonderful actor starts to whimper a little bit and says, please, please, don't say anything to anybody, don't call anybody. All right, tell me what it is. I asked a friend for a ride to the doctor, and he went through a stop sign. We were stopped by the police, and they found marijuana in the car, and I'm down at the police station, and the judge won't see us for a week, and they want bail. And however, the sheriff here is very nice, and he's willing to talk to you. All right? So here's his phone number. Will you call him, Papa? Of course I will. I call. The voice on the other end is in this time, it's a lady's voice. And I say, I'd like to talk to Sergeant Jones. She says, one moment, please. A man gets on the phone. This is Sergeant Jones. I understand you are the grandfather. I've already talked to the judge. I know your grandson has a clean record. He's a good kid. This will not be go on his record, but we can't let him go because of the amount of marijuana in the car. It could be classified as they have it for sale purposes. I start to get a little suspicious, and I said, Sergeant, what is your badge number? And he gives me a badge number. I said, what's your captain's name? And he gives me the captain's name. And I said, I happen to be somewhat involved with law enforcement in our city. I said, why don't you have the captain call me, and I'll put him in touch with the captain in our area, and I'm sure they can work it out. I was not a very good prospect at this point. I was asking too many questions, probing too deeply, and obviously not cooperating. He said, okay, I'll have to see the report strictly and so forth. When I called my grandson to check on him, he naturally said, Grandpa, I'm doing great. And believe me, I wish I was doing as well as he is. He's having a grand old time. He said, no, I'm doing fine, thanks. My point being is that if you Google grandparents scheme or grandparents fraud, it is phenomenal what you will read. The millions of dollars that are collected by unsuspecting grandparents. They pick up information mainly off of social media. Now, whether it's my grandson's social media or somewhere else, they can find your name. If you're called by a particular name by your grandparents, by your grandchildren, they will use that. They are very, very effective and very good. And I have subsequently reported it to our fine law enforcement people here. And they said, Ted, you can't believe how many calls we get like this. And it will increase dramatically as a reminder to all of our family constituents just to be on the lookout. But this is the first time it happened to me, and I wanted to share it with you. So, yes. Yes, go ahead, Dana.
You got your call on what day?
Monday.
On Monday. About 2 days before that was at the beginning of the weekend. I got a call from my grandson. Which of my grandsons is this? Pause. Well, the one who loves you so much, Grandpa. And I said, well, I have a message for you, grandson. It's a 3-word message that I won't recite here. And I know of one woman in our city who had the same episode 10 years ago. So it's been around a while. And she actually took them at their word for being a needy grandson of Cash. I would suggest that if you haven't got a little response that you've written down and you've practiced in your mind, because the odds are pretty decent that you'll get a call. This is the second time I've got one, and I know of my friend who got one and fell prey to these creeps. Anyway, don't forget the 3-word expression that you can use and then just hang up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something to be aware of. And of course, when you talk to them, what they want, of course, is an immediate response. They'll call generally later in the day when they feel the audience they're calling is either tired or off guard. And of course, again, it's a loving grandparent, unlike Dana, maybe who's not as loving. But that's who they're appealing to when they want either a wire sent by a wire or a debit card, anything that's immediately cashable. In any case, forewarned is forearmed. With that, Charlie, do you have any council comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I had 3. And I was just remembering, I did go because they said you have to go and get not a credit card, but a gift certificate. And I went to CVS and I'm standing there, $800 gift. And then it dawned on me, idiot, what are you doing? So sometimes you don't react right away to those phone calls until you're standing there picking out the gift certificates. So it's very good, Ted, that you brought this up, and Dana. It's very important. And yes, I do have something to say.
All right.
Thank you. Desert Theatricals brings pure entertainment to the Rancho Mirage Amphitheater once again with a fantastic lineup for the 2022 season. We begin on November the 20th and 21st with The Little Mermaid Jr. This classic Disney movie comes to life with Ariel, the mermaid princess, and her friends, and will transform the amphitheater into a wonderful underwater adventure. This production is, believe it or not, it's free to the public and presented by the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory Foundation and underwritten by the generous support of the Richard Brooks Foundation. Then on December the 11th and 12th, the Charles Dickens classic, A Christmas Carol, will certainly help all of us find that spirit of Christmas that we're all waiting for. This event is free to the public also and is presented by the City of Rancho Mirage in association with Desert Theatricals. Food and beverages will be available for purchases from Sandbox Kitchen and Agua California Bistro. No outside food or beverage is allowed inside the amphitheater. Gates for both events open at 5:30 p.m. and the performances begin at 7 p.m. Although these are free events, attendees must register online at deserttheatricals.com. That's deserttheatricals.com to register. But wait, there's more. Tickets are on sale now for 3 fabulous upcoming shows with a dinner theater option. All I have to say is, Mamma Mia! We all know the story, the songs, and the dances. So I hope to see everyone at the amphitheater on Friday, on February the 18th and 19th, enjoying the Smash ABBA musical. On March 18th and 19th, we'll have some sharp shooting at Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show with Annie Oakley and Frank Butler in that classic Irving Berlin's musical, Annie Gets Your Gun. Finishing out the 2022 season is the hysterical, long-running musical comedy, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. Gates open at 5:30 and the performance begins at 7:30 p.m. Dinner theater ticket holders will enjoy waiter-served meals at their reserved table in the first 3 tiers of the theater, provided by Aqua California Bistro. General admission ticket holders can purchase food from the Sandbox Kitchen or Aqua California Bistro. Beverages will be available for purchases provided by Aqua California Bistro at their on-site bar. General admission open seating is also in advance. Tickets are $50 plus a processing fee. General admission tickets can also be purchased at the door for $55 if there are seats available. Reserved dinner theater seating prices are $460 for a table of 4 and $690 for a table of 6. Also, if you are Rancho Mirage residents, you will receive a 15% discount on general admission tickets. Tickets must be purchased at the Rancho Mirage Library and proof of residency is required. If you have any questions, please call 760-620-5993 or email info@deserttheatricals.com. I hope to see all of you there enjoying these wonderful, entertaining productions and taking advantage of our beautiful amphitheater and gorgeous weather. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I said it's our version of the Hollywood Bowl. Wonderful evening when it's complete with dinner service. Great way to spend one of the days of the weekend. Dana, do you have any other council comments? Iris?
I do have comments, but I think Richard's going first.
Okay.
Okay.
Richard.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. And you can certainly tell that the season has begun. All the special events coming up over the next few weeks. Also coming up is a Rancho Mirage Emergency Preparedness Commission present in Safety for Preparedness, and this will be their fair on Saturday, October 8th or October 9th. I think, Ted, that's the same day as the shredding event at the library. So we're going to have 2 events there. This again will be the 9th from 9 a.m. to noon. Come visit several educational booths and exhibits. There will be demonstrations every 30 minutes from the fire department on properly using the fire extinguisher. Check out the Community Emergency Response Team trailer and sign up for the ongoing certification class, which will be held in November. For more information, visit Rancho Mirage Preparedness.org or contact City Hall at 760-324-4511. We hope to see you all there, and it should be a very informative event. And whether you've got trash to recycle or you've got interest in the emergency preparedness, please come and visit us. Thank you, Mayor.
The library will be the place to be. Iris?
Thank you. And thank you, Richard, for leading off with the information about the upcoming event for emergency preparedness. And just to let you know that I'm wearing this mask because a relative of mine is going to be having surgery, and I will be spending time with them, and didn't want to take any chances. I have been vaccinated, and if you are able to be vaccinated, I encourage you to do so also. But in addition to what Richard was saying about emergency preparedness, I have a few hints that perhaps you may want to take the opportunity to provide for yourself. These I keep in my car, every of them, and they're wonderful. They have a variety of different pieces inside, from Band-Aids and little gauze pieces, and just a variety of everything. You can get this also at any of your hardware stores. It's very reasonably priced. I believe I paid $8 for this. And you never know when you're going to need it, so it's always good to have on hand, both in the house and in your car. And then also, you may want to think about getting some Quake Hold. This I also got at one of the hardware stores, and I encourage everyone to please see about tearing off a little piece and just gluing down some of the projectiles that might be flying around in your home if there is a shaker. I know that being in Southern California, we're always very much aware of the possibility of earthquakes, and things do become projectiles. And it's very important that if you can attach something, they adhere very, very well. If you leave them for about a year, you almost need to have a scraper to get them detached. So they're very effective, they're very inexpensive, and it's a great investment, especially for your expensive pieces that might be very fragile and you would not want to lose. And then there's also a couple things I would mention about that. And if you have an opportunity, provide yourself with some small bills in an emergency. And I remember when we had the '94 Northridge earthquake, one of the big problems was that so many of the electrical items were out and people were not able to make change. So we encourage people to have small bills, 1s, 5s, 10s, because people very often will not be able to give you change. So whatever you pay for an item, if that's the size of the bill, very often you will not be getting change. Also, we encourage you to make copies of your important documents. Put it on a flash drive if you can, and then give it to a relative, put it in your safe deposit box. Just keep it safe so that in an emergency, at least you will have access to your important documents. And also a fire extinguisher. If you don't have a fire extinguisher, they're a very inexpensive investment, and they're good to have, especially in your kitchen area. So those are three things, but one of the things I also wanted to mention, and Jason, if you can put up, one of the things that I do, and I encourage everyone to do, is go around your house with your camera, take pictures of everything you have. Open your drawers, open your closets, take a picture of all of your decorative items, everything in your house, because if you have a problem and you have to submit a claim to your insurance company and you say, I've got all this stuff, they're going to want to seek some kind of evidence. This is a picture of one of my drawers. I've got a whole lot of drawers, and they're all on film. And I have put them on my flash drive. One is in our safety deposit box. One I have given to a relative. And if you can go for the next one, this is another drawer that I have mine. So I have not skimped on any of my picture taking. I've probably got about 300 pictures, and that were easy to put on a flash drive. And as I say, if you submit claims to an insurance company and you can provide this kind of evidence of your belongings, it is very important. And for the next one, and these are some of my shoes. And I know a lot of women collect a lot of shoes, even if we don't wear them. So if you say you have 50 pair of shoes, they're going to want to see exactly what your 50 pair of shoes consist of. So this is just a small sample of my shoes. Most of them I haven't worn in a long time, but I certainly wouldn't want to lose them, and especially when I want to use them the next time. And I know we all talk about drop, cover, and hold on. And this is a picture of me that was taken when I was mayor a few years back. And we, of course, have our drill every year in October where we all practice drop, covering ourselves and holding on. This is under the mayor's desk, and I have to tell you, it was very easy getting down. Wasn't quite so easy getting back up again. And I know most of you probably feel that way, but it's something that where you can look around your house. Most people don't have some place to hide in every room. So be aware of what you can possibly hide under. And if you can't hide under it, figure out a way where you can brace yourself against something that is very sturdy, that you don't have to worry about it falling on you, and make sure that your safety is provided in every room you might be located if the big one does occur. So, thank you again, Richard, for the introduction to emergency preparedness. I hope this has been helpful information, and just be safe and moving right along. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Iris. We'll now go to the city manager comments. Isaiah, please.
None today, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All righty. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to the minutes of September 16th? If they do not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Oh, this was the minutes? Okay, wait a minute. I need to abstain on mine. Okay. Thank you.
Enter your vote one more time.
Who?
All of them.
Dana, one more time.
Let's see. There we go. Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. If you would, Isaiah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, you have 4 items on your consent calendar for consideration. Item number 1 is to waive the full reading of all ordinances introduced or adopted pursuant to this agenda. Item number 2 is to adopt ordinance number 1188, second reading, amending the general plan zoning map land use designation from residential low density to open space public park on approximately 1.1 acres located at 70105 Frank Sinatra Drive under general plan zoning map amendment case number GPZMA 20-0003. Item number 3 are contracts, and item number 4 are demands. Before we go to the council, if any member of the public wishes to speak on one of these 4 items, now is the time to do so. If you are participating remotely, you would hit the raised hand button. If you are on your telephone, you would hit *9. Christy?
We do not have any speaker cards.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on one of these 4 items that didn't fill out a speaker card?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Just one moment, please. We do have someone on our remote audience. Looks like they went away. This is not the short-term rental item, if that's what they were wanting to speak on. I'll give them a minute. Okay, seeing no one on our remote audience, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn this over to you.
All right. Richard, you wanted to make a motion to approve?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move approval of the consent calendar.
Second that.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
The next item will be ordinance next in order, which is the first reading, amending Chapter 17.30, Standards for Specific Land Uses of Title 17 Zoning of the Rancho Mirage Municipal Code to prohibit short-term rentals throughout the city, and repealing Chapter 3.25, Short-Term Rentals of Title III Revenue and Finance, and that will be handled by Isaiah Hagerman, our city manager. Isaiah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So the city's first short-term rental ordinance was adopted in July of 2011. So this is not a new topic for the city of Rancho Mirage. So for about the past decade, the city has routinely updated this ordinance really out of necessity to adjust to the factors that we were seeing within our residential neighborhoods. The history of short-term rentals in Rancho Mirage, we were attempting to find a balance between this commercial use and the residential use to see if there was a way for these two uses to coexist in our residential zones. So throughout the city's history, we've made numerous amendments to our code really to adjust to this growing industry and the issues that stemmed from this commercial use in our residential zones. Examples of that is, when we started getting the concern from specific neighborhoods that they were losing their neighborhood and they were getting inundated with short-term rentals, we started to create anti-cluster rules and limit the number of short-term rental permits we would issue within a specific neighborhood to try to adjust to that. We have regulations in there that prohibit jumping off a roof into a swimming pool. These regulations exist because those things happened. And it just seems like as the city's progressed through its history with this industry, it's a very hard one to regulate. The industry itself is built around trying to hide itself from regulation, from the websites that they use to rent, who share no information with the city whatsoever, to the rules that we create pretty much in recent history. About every year we were having to amend this ordinance to account for the new thing this industry was trying to get around within our existing ordinance. So it's been a long time and a constant analyzing and shifting by the city. The proposal before you today is a rather simple one. And really, it's a basic question, policy question to the council is, at the end of the day, is this commercial use appropriate in our residential zones? And that's the policy question that this ordinance, if approved by the council, would remove this use from our residential zones. If it's not approved by the council, then the current ordinance would stay in effect. What this ordinance would do for anyone that has a short-term rental certificate that was issued under ordinance number 1174, they would be automatically extended to June 30th of 2022 to give them time to find their operations. If approved by the council, this ordinance would immediately put a stop to any new permits being issued once the ordinance is effective, of course. So the ordinance has to go through first reading today. If it's adopted, it would have to go to second reading, and then 30 days after second reading, it would become effective. But this would cease all short-term rental uses within our residential zones within the city of Rancho Mirage. The other thing that we have seen the result of is just as this industry has grown, we're not the only community that has struggled with this issue of short-term rentals of commercial uses within our residential zones. There was an interesting case out of Cathedral City. It was the Brown versus Montage at Mission Hills, so just up Duval here in the city of Cathedral City. And really, at the end of the day, what this case now establishes is many of our HOA communities have enacted short-term rental bans within their own communities, so limiting rentals to 30 days or longer. And this case went directly at that rule just due to I think the amount of HOA communities that are implementing these rules. And what the court ruled is if a HOA community implements a prohibition on short-term rentals, that can only be applied to new property owners after the date of the change within the HOA bylaws. So any existing property owner that owned that property before that rule change, the HOA could not enforce that prohibition against that property owner. So really, when you look at Rancho Mirage, that has the ability, this court case really has the ability to undermine the HOA's intent to limit short-term rentals within their own community. So as a city, it has no bearing on our regulation. The city council can adopt a ban on short-term rentals, and it would apply to everyone within the city. This is really getting at the HOA's ability to limit short-term rentals. With that, I'll go ahead and I'll turn this over to our city attorney's office, who's going to make a few comments. Michael?
Well, thank you, Isaiah. I have Michael Cobden in my office, who's going to be on Zoom. Interestingly, I hired Mr. Cobden a couple years ago. He came from the Santa Monica City Attorney's Office, and he was deeply involved with short-term rentals there for the city of Santa Monica. So he comes over here, and we think, I got all these projects for you to work on, and boom, we're dealing with the same thing he was dealing with a few years ago. So this case is, we've actually been sued on our short-term rental partial ban, and so we've been in litigation for about a couple of years now. And this whole short-term rental issue is kind of like how we were dealing with some of the cannabis issues a few years ago when they were illegal, and there was this transition where we start seeing more and more of these kind of businesses popping up. State got involved, the voters got involved, and the rules have changed. With short-term rentals now, we're seeing a number of laws coming, being put on the books that the governor's been signing off on that pertain to issues, as Mr. Hagerman mentioned, issues that pertain to homeowners associations and their CC&Rs. Those are all trumped by whatever we do. So the bottom line is that if a city imposes a ban on short-term rentals, or whether the county imposes a ban on short-term rentals, that takes precedence over what's going on in these private communities in the context of their HOAs and their CC&Rs. And so that's where I see that there's a lot of confusion sometimes, and it's legitimate confusion because, when the state drafts a new law and adopts a new law, it's not entirely clear, and they don't give the big picture. So what I would like to do is introduce Michael Cobden. He's one of the assistant city attorneys here, and again, he's been working on this case for quite a while. We actually have brought in additional counsel to help us out in this case, just because there are a lot of really important issues that are going to impact not only the city of Rancho Mirage, but cities throughout the entire state of California. And all of us cities who are kind of immersed in this litigation dealing with short-term rentals, we're all sharing information. And in some cases, some of us are getting different decisions at the trial court levels, but fortunately at the Court of Appeal level and what we see at the Supreme Court level, we're seeing consistency there. So I anticipate that in the end, we'll probably all end up with the same final decisions on the scope of how far cities can go to regulate these short-term rental uses. Now, just to kind of put things into perspective from my personal legal opinion, is that short-term rentals are really a commercial use. They're a commercial use in that they are renting out units, they're renting out their guest houses, their casitas, their homes, and they're renting it out for temporary use like a hotel or a motel. And so we have lots of residents who come into the city of Rancho Mirage, buy a house, they invest in the real estate here, they put their children in our local schools, and then lo and behold, we find out that they are complaining about basically living next to a motel room. I mean, that's essentially what it boils down to from their perspective. So they're looking at all of these negative secondary uses. And so when we get those complaints and local residents express those concerns to us, it's our job as staff folks and as technicians for the city council to advise the council that your constituents have issues with these type of uses. And it's our job, it's particularly my job as a city attorney, to work with the planning staff and with city manager's office on coming up with possible remedies. So we put people at ease, particularly those who have invested a lot in moving here and putting their kids in school here, to put them at ease that we'll do what we can to regulate these kind of businesses so it will mitigate the negative secondary effects to something that's tolerable. And so we made a good faith attempt to do that over the years. The city, we started out with allowing them. We had a process set up, an application process. We did background checks. We had really aggressive fines put into place. And still, we ran into more problems. And as we've gone through the years of reviewing the regulation and reconsidering them, we discovered issues like people jumping off the roofs into their swimming pools. I mean, not their swimming pools, the renters. We saw a lot of that kind of activity going on. And so when you take a look at our ordinance, you'll see a lot of these, what seems to be very draconian, issues or regulations. But believe me, when we have a regulation that prohibits people from jumping off the roofs into swimming pools, that's a real problem that we have. We had problems with parking, and so we tried all these regulations with respect to parking, and apparently they were not working out to the satisfaction of the residents who actually live here full time. So with that said, what I would like to do is introduce Michael Cobden. I believe we have him on Zoom. Here he is. Here's Michael. And so Michael, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you, Steve. And just make sure everyone can hear me. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Isaiah, for kicking off the policy discussion. I'm going to focus a little more on the particulars of the ordinance and the city's legal authority to enact it. I would like to dovetail a little bit with Steve's comments about the increasing difficulty of regulating this commercial use. And you'll notice in the staff report, we included a copy of the county grand jury report on short-term rentals. And I think it's very interesting and informative to see that we're not the only jurisdiction in the area grappling with this. Indeed, as Steve mentioned, virtually every city and municipality and county throughout the state is grappling this, and even worldwide. And the county in particular was making very interesting recommendations to continued allowance and regulation of short-term rentals. And those recommended measures for the county included detailed inspections, safety inspections, the number of rooms being rented. So this involves staff going actually into the structures to regularly inspect these units and these residences. Verification of contact information, which requires following up repeatedly to make sure that the 24/7 contact individual is actually available. Increased fees, increased staff monitoring, responses to the online complaint systems, requiring indemnity agreements and additional insurance coverage. It really is a lot that is being recommended to the county on the county level. And many of these are really excellent ideas for the city to consider as well. But when you take them all into account, what we're really looking at is a rather large regulatory approach, which nonetheless may or may not be able to mitigate the significant impacts to residential neighborhoods and the character and quality of life of the city, as Isaiah mentioned it, and as the council has discussed on many occasions over the past 10 years in attempting to make this balance. And the Planning Commission also noted it in their deliberations as well. So I think really what we're looking at here in terms of how to address these quality of life impacts would be an enormous increase in regulation, which may not be something, and indeed isn't something that the city seems interested in pursuing. And the alternative is really to go with a much simpler approach to prohibit them outright. I also want to note that, as Steve mentioned, we do consider short-term rentals to be a commercial use. And it's not just our opinion. This is reflected in legislation as well. For example, Government Code 66300, the state legislature has expressly stated that a city or a county may enact development policy standards or prohibitions on, quote, commercial use of land designated for residential use including short-term occupancy of residences. So the legislature not only considers short-term occupancy of residences to be a commercial use, but has expressly stated that it is well within the authority of the city and the county to regulate or prohibit that commercial use in residential areas. This just is the latest iteration of such authority. In fact, it goes back at least 30 years in the case law and decisions of the courts, which have repeatedly upheld municipalities' authority to regulate or indeed prohibit outright short-term rentals. So just to be very clear, although not everybody feels the same way, the law is very clear that the city has the authority to enact this ordinance to prohibit short-term rentals outright throughout the city. And I also appreciate Isaiah's mentioning of the Brown Mission Hills case. To me, the legal significance of that case is really that the city in the past has relied upon HOAs to self-police this activity within their boundaries. And that's really the justification and the basis for the compromise that is baked into Ordinance 1174, which is the city's current regulatory scheme. That court case, the Mission Hills case, essentially pulls the rug out from under that assumption in 1174 that the HOAs can regulate their own landowners. In fact, they can't unless they have bought in before the regulations, or rather they bought in after the regulations are imposed. So anybody who lives in an HOA who bought into it already, and then the HOA decides, you know what, we've had enough of these STRs, they really can't do anything about it. It really would be up to the city to regulate. Only the city could do so. So that really undermines the need for citywide action on this front. So that's a lot of background. I'd like to just take a quick moment to go over the key points of the ordinance. The first thing the ordinance does is it amends the zoning ordinance in the city to expressly state that as a commercial use, rentals of residential properties for less than, let me see what the exact number is, but the short-term rentals of 27 consecutive calendar days, the rentals of a part or a whole of a residence for less than 27 consecutive days is prohibited citywide. So that's the basic prohibition in the ordinance. The second thing that the ordinance does, as Isaiah mentioned, is it creates a little caveat that if you have been issued a certificate under Ordinance 1174, if you were issued a valid certificate for 2021, which normally would expire at the end of the year, as all of these certificates do, this ordinance would allow those validly issued certificates to continue to be valid until June of 2022. And the idea here is to allow people who are operating short-term rentals and doing so in a way that is consistent with the rules and regulations that were established by the city under Ordinance 1174, that those individuals could have a little more time to honor contracts or agreements that they might have had or plans they might have put into place that were dependent or reliant on being able to rent short-term, that they'd have that little bit more time to operate before they have their certificates expire. So that's an important part of the ordinance as well. The last thing, well, I do want to make clear also that we've retained some of the penalties for violations, in particular the two for operating without certificates that were under 3.25, and that includes a penalty of $5,000 for the first violation and then $10,000 for the second within a 12-month period. The last thing that the ordinance will do is create a moratorium from the date that it is effective on the issuance of additional certificates. So we calculate that assuming that the council approves the ordinance at this reading and at second reading toward the end of the month, the ordinance will go into effect on November 20th. Of this year, which leaves just a little bit more time in the year. And we wanted to make sure that in the meantime, no more certificates were issued that would just be valid for that short month plus the 6-month extension. So for now, we're suggesting to the council that the ordinance would allow those who have already been operating to operate for an additional 6 months, but no new certificates should be issued under this ordinance or 1174. That pretty much covers the nuts and bolts of the ordinance, the legal basis for it. If the council has any questions as this hearing goes on, I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Michael. And before we open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing, I will note that this item, the public hearing notice for this item was posted at City Hall, the library, and our website, and it was also posted in the Desert Sun. With that, we'll go ahead and open up the public testimony portion of this public hearing. So if any member of the public wishes to speak on this item, now is the time to do so. You would hit *9 on your telephone or the raise hand button on Zoom. Christy?
First speaker is Jared Deneen Shandstrom.
Good afternoon. City Council members and those in attendance today, both virtually and in person. My name is Jared Deneen Shandstrom, and I'm a founder of VRON RM. I'm here today to share my story to try and give the City Council a real-life example of how banning short-term rentals affects more than just those who own the home. These ordinances affect those who are striving to make a life for themselves in what we all know to be one of the best cities in California. I've told my story here before, and it fell on deaf ears. I hope that now that you're here in person and I can look each of you in the eye, it'll make more of an impact. And I hope that you hear my plea. My wife and I moved here 2 years ago next week to work in the hospitality industry. My wife running a short-term rental company, and I selling large-scale multicultural weddings at the Westin Mission Hills. We quickly fell in love with Rancho Mirage and decided to try and make it our home. We strive to actually own a home in the Tamarisk neighborhood one day. 6 months after moving here, the pandemic struck and large-scale weddings were not able to happen. I lost my job and my unemployment ran out quickly. My wife's income was the only thing keeping us afloat. We altered our businesses into real estate sales in addition to managing homes and HOAs. Homes that last year you said were safer than public STRs as they had their own rules and their own regulations. Why is it now that almost a year to the date after that initial vote, you've decided this is no longer the case? I understand that there are new laws in place, but grandfathering is not an issue. There are many people here in my same position, and I hope that you take our stories into consideration today in your vote. For those that are here in support of STRs, please stand and *9 on your phones or raise your hand on Zoom. These are the people that you are affecting. I want you to hear their stories. Please save our businesses. I have 2 questions beyond this. You say that this is a commercial industry. Could someone please define the difference between the commercial difference between 28 days and a year term? You say it's a motel. They're here for 27 nights. They're here for 31 nights. This is arbitrary. Please explain to me the difference. I would love to have a conversation about this. Secondly, next year, will you also outlaw renting your house out altogether because you make a profit from it? That doesn't make sense to me. I yield my time. Thank you.
The next speaker is Carol Chait.
Good afternoon. Basically, I was going to say the same thing as Jared said. I don't understand why renting out your house for 30 days is different than renting out your house for 20 days. We had a problem with the pandemic, with a family that came here from Brazil during the pandemic. The kids were playing in the pool. It was very hot in July, and our neighbor who lived behind us was yelling swear words for hours. The people didn't want to hear kids playing, and he actually was instrumental in having our people break their contract and leave. So, you know, we have to think about how these things impact the tenants, and I feel that the short-term rentals help our city because it introduces people who otherwise might not come to Rancho Mirage to come here and enjoy it, and I wish the council would reconsider. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ken Hatfield.
Guess I've been sitting too long. It's a little stiff. Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, I'd like to say in the beginning, I've lived here for 30 years. This is the first council meeting I've attended. And the reason for that is for the spectacular job that you've all been doing. I do, however, show up today for the STR event. Having planned a retirement for 30 years, worked here for 25 years, sold my business here, determined how I was going to make a living staying here, find myself in a quandary. The council is taking my living away. 25% of my income will go away. I don't know of any of you that can take a hit like that and be comfortable. So I'm here to say I'm not happy about that at all. My wife and I are getting on in years, and it's too late in life to start over again. And we certainly don't want to move out of here. Moving into someplace else would cost 30 grand just to get out, another 30 grand to get in someplace else that we don't even know where we would go. All of our family and what have you are positioned in a vicinity travelable from this location. It's just an impossible situation that you're putting us in. We reside in the Rancho Las Palmas Country Club. In the report that I downloaded from the city attorney, it says that we're having all kinds of disturbances and so forth and so on. I did a quick investigation because I didn't become aware of this until Monday. My investigation lasted a total of about 6 hours. I can't find anybody that's ever had a complaint or heard of a complaint in the 874 homeowners that are in our club. So I went to the property manager. Property manager said, in the last 2 years, we may have had 2 or 3. So to be on the safe side, I'd say in the last 2 years, it's less than 5. 5 maybe complaints, and more likely 2 or 3. That says 1.25 or 1.5 per year. I don't think that's something the city council should even be looking at. Maybe I'm wrong in some ways. I certainly became more educated by listening to the presentation made by the city manager and the city attorney. Let me suggest that I know of 3 other homeowners that live close by that also do short-term rentals, and we all do it during season. We're not doing it necessarily all year long, and we don't have a public out there that's wanting to rent all year long. They're paying $4,000 a month to get into our house. And I don't look at it as a commercial business. I look at it as I'm sharing my home with other people in the U.S. and abroad that want to come and see Rancho Mirage. That brings revenue to the city well and beyond any costs that you could possibly entertain in trying to police. And what cost could you possibly be having in policing if, in fact, we're only having 1.5 calls a month or a year? It just doesn't make sense. If I look at the statistics, the probable statistics, let me put it that way, there isn't a business in this city that doesn't profit by short-term rentals. These people are coming to town to go see the sights and spend money.
Would you kindly wind up your comments? You exceeded the time frame.
Well, let me thank you for reminding me, because I wasn't paying any attention. It just doesn't, initially, looking at the terms, I understood that we were talking about determining this new short-term rental as 27 days. Now I'm hearing that it's going to be completely obliterated. 27 days, 2 weeks. If the people come here for more than 5 days, they're not going to be tearing up the place for 5 days. There aren't too many people, even teenagers, that can survive that long doing that kind of excitement. We just don't have the problem that I'm hearing about, at least in the HOA areas. So I'd respectfully request that you take another look and consider what you're doing to me and other people like me. We don't want to leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is Cynthia Adams. Cynthia Adams.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Cynthia Adams. I am the owner of one short-term rental, so I may be the smallest business owner here in the city. My short-term rental, we do get many renters who intend to stay greater than 30 days. The average age of my tenants is 57 years old. They don't tend to jump off the roof. So I think that we need to perhaps invest in additional study to determine not only who are the tenants that are coming to our city and what kind of dollars do they bring in revenue to the restaurants, to the entertainment venues, to the sporting events, to the travel industry. I think that the same way that we encourage Marriott and Hyatt to bring us visitors because their dollars are vital, the same way that all of us and our short-term rentals, even on the tiny scale that we work, we still invite these tenants to bring the dollars to our community. The nice thing is they come and they drop their money off and then they leave. So it's a good thing. They don't tend to utilize our schools and our hospitals, and yet they bring millions of dollars to us, which is a good thing. It would be interesting to see which kind of jobs are supported by this aspect of the hospitality industry. I support a property manager, staff. I have maintenance personnel. I have maids. And then, any kind of upgrades and maintenance to the property. So the fact that my business runs as a short-term rental, we spend plenty of that, recycle that money back into the local community. It seems as though perhaps we're listening to some rather vocal opponents, and they can be perhaps the minority, but because they have a loud megaphone, perhaps they're influencing opinions that perhaps their information may or may not be accurate. I think that further study is required before we make a decision. Okay? Any questions for me at all? No? Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Gail Friedman.
Hi. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. We actually have 2 Airbnbs, short-term rentals, and which is actually regulated now by VRBO, Airbnb. They take personal action if there's any issues whatsoever with short-term rentals. It's a shame that Rancho Mirage is allowing this country, which is the problem for everyone in this world, is that we're letting a few bad apples ruin the opportunity for all that do take advantage of this great opportunity. She just stated, we're building employee opportunities. By taking away those short-term rentals, you're taking away a lot of employment. City attorney's office, to complain that you're going to have to regulate, oh, you're going to take away people's opportunity to employ other people for the city, to actually help benefit your city. Unimaginable that you guys are even considering taking away. This is a great opportunity, an American dream for people to build their businesses. And you have the audacity to take that away. It's amazing that you're taking that away from these people. You should be ashamed of yourself. This is not what America represents, and it's an opportunity. And believe me, the betterment, just like COVID, for these people who abstain from vaccinations, there's lots of reason, but it's not about taking a stand. It's about the human being and making it better for everyone, not just themselves. You need to see the whole picture. I appreciate your time, and please reconsider.
The next speaker is Mike Ziskind. Mike Ziskind.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Ziskind. I live at 25 Sierra Vista Drive in Rancho Mirage. I'm a full-time resident. I'm also chairman of Neighborhoods of Rancho Mirage, NORM, a California mutual benefit corporation, and we support a total ban on short-term vacation rentals. Short-term vacation rental, what is it really? It's a slick industry marketing term for an unsupervised, for-profit, commercial transient motel plopped into a neighborhood. They're incompatible with our neighborhoods, and they deprive residents of the residential vibe and the quiet enjoyment that they move to Rancho Mirage for. I've yet to see a real estate flyer which touts the perks of living next door to an unsupervised vacation rental, and that's because there are none. For over a decade, owners have dumped their problems that their properties created for us at our city's front door. And then they expect staff and taxpayers to suffer the consequences and come up with and pay for solutions. 10 months ago, this council stood up to the industry lobbyists and the investors and put residents first by prohibiting short-term rentals in public neighborhoods. I know that was a tough decision. We joined other progressive, forward-thinking cities like Palm Desert, Cathedral City, and Indian Wells, who laid to rest the last vestiges of this decade-old failed experiment so that a few investors can get rich at our expense. And you know what? Those cities have not fallen off the face of the earth, and neither has Rancho Mirage. Many owners live somewhere else. They certainly aren't my neighbors. They can't accept an Amazon package or keep my spare key or look out for an elderly resident. Unsupervised transient motels in our neighborhoods degrade our sophisticated brand and our marketing efforts. Our iconic neighborhoods are irreplaceable assets to our city. They are not ATM machines for get-rich-quick investors. Thank you.
The next speaker is Mark Siskind.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a full-time resident of Rancho Mirage. Rancho Mirage is a quiet, upscale retirement community. The median age is 66. We residents are entitled to peace and quiet and privacy. Short-term rentals infringe on these rights. There's a feeling of security that you get knowing who your neighbors are. If you allow short-term rentals, you can wake up every day to a different group of strange cars and strange faces. Gone is that secure feeling that comes with the familiarity of knowing who lives next door to you. If a sex offender moves next door, they're required to register with the state of California. That information is public. If a sex offender rents the short-term rental next door to you, you'll never know it. I don't believe that a person's right to turn his home into a money-generating motel should be more important than my right to the quiet enjoyment of my home. I live across the street from a new construction project. It's 7 single-family homes on a 2-acre lot. According to VRBO, this will be a short-term rental compound. VRBO shows plans to rent all 7 homes with a 3-night minimum, despite the city ordinance prohibiting this. My neighbors and I spent a year fighting dust, noise, and construction traffic. We were hoping that families would eventually move in and we could resume a normal life in a normal community. This STR compound will bring up to 37 cars and 74 different transient visitors every 3 days to my neighborhood. This is a mini resort in the middle of a residential neighborhood. This is STRs on steroids. This is insanity. The STR industry has no qualms about ruining our neighborhoods so a few investors can get rich. Don't let them fool you into thinking that STRs are good for Rancho Mirage. I support this council's efforts to prohibit all short-term rentals in our city. Thank you.
The next speaker is Don Montero.
Mayor and council members, I'm a new resident in Rancho Mirage. I also live in the Rancho Las Palmas Country Club, and I've been wanting to live in this desert for many years. Well, I, like many people, sold my home in Los Angeles and bought a nice home in my complex, and I didn't even know about rentals. But with a closed one business and an investment in another one that's going south, I was told that I could do that in my HOA, and I've had 2 families rent short-term in my place, and I have it managed by my real estate agent in Los Angeles, so he vets them. I think VRBO vets everybody, and it's been small children and their and their parents, and there's no pools close to the roofs in Rancho Las Palmas Country Club. So I've been fortunate, but it has helped, you know, with taxes, et cetera. And this is my 4th year now. So I'm thinking that maybe Rancho Las Palmas HOA, the board, et cetera, can regulate things a little better, because we have gated guards at our gates, and so you have to be somebody on a list to get in. So that's what I'm asking. I wish you could keep it for a bit longer. I think I pay 11% of the income for the rental. And anyway, that's my case. So thank you very much for listening to me, and good luck.
The next speaker is Nelson Ferran.
Thank you, members of the board, for allowing me to speak this afternoon. My wife and I purchased our home. It'll be 2 years on November 28th. We lived in Calabasas, California. I practiced law there, retired a few years back, found a house in your city here, wonderful development, and made the move here 2 years ago. Recently, in taking a walk around the neighborhood, I was astonished to find that a development was built with 6 or 7 homes, must be at least 3,000 square feet or more, on what seemed to be a normal piece of property. I thought it was a condominium development. I didn't realize until recently that it was a development for short-term rentals. I just imagined to myself how many people it would accommodate. And I understand a company owns these homes. They plan to have cooks, chefs, babysitters, a whole series of accommodations in order to make the renters very happy. I live in a gated community of 48 homes. I understand that the state has passed a new law that goes into effect that disallows or permits you to restrict for 30 days or 28 days less. Right now, our CC&R restriction. Frankly speaking, I cannot believe these homes were built. I mean, they're gorgeous homes as you walk by. I assumed they were for sale. I didn't realize that they were for rent. I'm happy to see that the state has now intervened, mandating elimination of short-term rentals, and you are considering the elimination of short-term rentals, as I understand. I am happy that this is being accomplished. I cannot envision 6 or 7 homes in a short little span of land with all the cars that will be going in and out. This is a beautiful city. My wife and I made a very smart decision moving here from Calabasas. I want to continue living here for the rest of my life, and I'm very pleased with everything that I've seen so far. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Philip Bright.
Thank you. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for this opportunity to come before you and give you my thoughts concerning short-term rentals. I'll start with what I consider an absolutely unconscionable attempt to put a hotel into a residential neighborhood.
Could you lift the mic up, please? Your microphone?
Sorry?
Can you lift up the mic?
Lift this up?
Yeah, so we can hear you better. Thank you.
Is that better? I have hearing aids, so I'm getting it loud and clear. I'd like to start with what I consider an unconscionable attempt to put into our residential neighborhood what is virtually a horizontal hotel. And I'm referring to the one on La Paz. One of the other speakers here just spoke specifically about that, and I am as well. I consider Bravo's complex, as I said, a horizontal hotel. It's a business. It's going to be doing commercial work, and it's going to have a lot of hotel service, well, numerous hotel services that are going to come with the rentals that they're suggesting. What I find interesting is not many people knew that they were going to be short-term rentals. Obviously, the building department didn't care when they issued the permit because it's a building and they have the right to build under the rules of the city. Their website, which I believe is BravoLuxuryRentals.com, shows that they're asking or expecting to have these homes rented on a short-term basis, meaning 3 days minimum. And that's all they're requiring. And the rates they're charging, I can understand why. But I think what's going to happen is with the case of Bravo, as it had planned to put their quote, I'll call it horizontal hotel into our neighborhood. But the neighborhood is really for neighbors. The La Paz itself is the street, has individual homes, but it's still a neighborhood. And I'd like to, or I hope, that we preserve it that way. To me, I would guess the people who pay the price and plan a group get-together on a short-term basis will be planning to party. I don't know if they'll be planning to jump off the roof. I thought that was kind of funny. But it's going to be loud and it's going to be uncontrolled. The police aren't going to be able to control what's going on with, let's say, a 6-bedroom place. I think 5 or 6 of the houses are 5 or 6 bedrooms, so let's just say it's 5. That's 30 people. Then plus the larger house, that's another, let's see, that'll be 1 extra room.
Would you kindly,
so we're going to end up with 37.
Wind up your comments shortly.
But at any rate, parking, I think, is going to be an issue. I think the noise is going to be awful, and I don't envy you folks being having to make a decision about some people who have smaller locations that they would like to do versus these larger ones that come in and just sort of take over and do it. So I'd like to urge you to vote no and keep our city and our wonderful neighborhoods. Thank you.
The next speaker is Louisa Davis.
Good afternoon. My name is Louisa Davis. I'm a resident of Rancho Mirage and the president of VRON RM. I was never involved in any kind of government or city management prior to a year ago. You are the elected leadership for Rancho Mirage. I'm extremely surprised that in your leadership role, you would instruct city employees to defy a court order of July 23rd, putting the city in contempt of court. I cannot believe that you would put employees in this position where they could be sent to jail for not following a judge's ruling. This has had to be a very difficult decision for them in order for them to keep their jobs. I believe these decisions are reckless and irresponsible. I'm also surprised that in your leadership role, you would allow staff reports from which you are making major decisions to be published without any data supporting the claims. We have heard from multiple residents today about their fear of how short-term rentals impact their neighborhoods or are going to. The La Paz HOA that right now is about to become short-term rentals. The data, if data was published in the staff reports, these residents would realize that in all of 2019 and 2020, there were only 7 citations written for any disruptive behavior. There were 37 legitimate complaints to the hotline for STRs. This is information that the city has provided VRON and our legal teams. If this data was in the staff reports, maybe these residents would feel a little bit better than how they feel right now, because they don't know what the data is. The opposite is true. The staff report also repeatedly categorizes STRs as commercial use, but California law clearly establishes that renting property for fewer than 30 days is no more commercial than renting property on a long-term basis. Data is so important for decision making. The data the city has provided VRON shows that STRs are not impacting the health, safety, and welfare of our city. I think this is why possibly you are choosing not to include this data in your published reports. Then you could not justify your decisions. Again, I believe these decisions are reckless and irresponsible. There are many jobs that are being impacted due to your decisions to totally ban STRs. I would think that you would look to Palm Desert as to what is happening there. El Paseo was thriving 2 years ago, and now due to the 18-month STR ban in that city, every 5th business on El Paseo is now a vacant storefront. This can happen to Rancho Mirage. The river is already being impacted. We are a tourist destination, and in the general plan, it states that we want to develop business that draws in tourism. STR brings both tourism and businesses to this community and support many families. People's lives are dramatically impacted by these decisions you are making. You not only are taking away owners' property rights, but the livelihoods of so many. All of you live in multi-million-dollar homes and do not worry about where your next paycheck is coming from.
Please conclude your remarks.
Okay, but there are many that are not so fortunate. Your attitudes were made so clear to me when one of you said, If you cannot afford to own a vacation home in Rancho Mirage and not rent it, then you do not belong here. I wish every resident could have heard that comment. They might vote differently in the next election. Thank you.
The next speaker is Alyssa Lee. Alyssa Lee. The next speaker is Alyssa Lee. Alyssa Lee.
Obviously, I'm not Alyssa Lee. She couldn't make it, so I'm just reading her report. Good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Lee, and I'm a resident of Rancho Mirage. I'd like to give you my perspective, as I have a residence here near short-term rentals. My home has 3 short-term rentals around it, one next door, one directly across the street, and another one house away. We live in a really safe neighborhood, but as of January 1st, on just my street alone, there have been 3 break-ins. All short-term rental houses and one house where the car was stolen right out of the driveway. Another empty short-term rental house further down the street had vagrants living in it, where the police had to come and get them out. These houses used to be short-term rentals, but now they're empty. So now there's vagrancies living in there. I believe that this is why there's crime on the street, which we didn't have before. I will say that when I realized there were short-term rentals around me, I was nervous, but the people that manage those houses have actually done a very good job, and I personally don't have any complaints. I am more worried about the houses sitting empty in the future and will attract more crime. I hope you'll consider this in your decision today. Thank you.
The next speaker is Rosalba Ramirez.
My name is Rosie Ramirez. I live in Palm Springs, California. For the last 8 years, my husband and I have been working for a property management company as the house cleaners for short-term rentals. Most of the rentals homes are in Rancho Mirage. It has been very difficult for my family because of January 1st of the year, our family income has been cut by 2/3 since the city of Rancho Mirage has banned short-term rentals. I hardly have any work now. We are not rich people. We depend on the income to support our children. Our family of 4 lived in a 3-bedroom house, and now we had to move into 1-bedroom mobile home. I'm here to representing all of the house cleaners that are impacted by your decisions. Thank you.
The next speaker is Pamela Tinsley. Pamela Tinsley.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Pamela Tinsley, and I am a real estate broker with Keller Williams in Beverly Hills. I have been in the desert, owned second homes in the desert, in Palm Springs, in Cathedral City, in Rancho Mirage, since 2003. I have a property management company in addition to selling real estate sales, and that property management company has managed long and short-term rentals. And I find the issue always to be management. Personally, it's easier to manage a short-term tenant than it is a horrible neighbor that buys the house next door to you that you don't get to vet. and is not going to leave in 2 weeks or a week. So aside from the fact that you don't want short-term rentals in the city, if they're well managed, and you've had management companies like McLean, like Orange Palm, and other management companies, vacation rental companies, that have been operating here for years and have been putting short-term rentals before Airbnb was and VRBO were even a thing, and there seem to be no complaints. As a real estate broker, selling to a lot of people want to buy second homes in the desert. They like it. And I've shown homes in Rancho Mirage. I bought in Rancho Mirage. And I think I understood you to say 10 years you've been grappling with this issue. Well, since 2003, and certainly within 10 years, I have been bringing people to Rancho Mirage, driving through, looking at homes. And I see none of these issues that you talk about. I see no data supporting the issues that you talk about. I see beautiful homes. I see people abiding by the parking rules. I see homes well kept. And I don't know, when I'm driving through as a realtor with a client, if that person living in that home is a short-term renter, under 28 days, over 30 days, a year, or a property owner. I don't know these things. And that's a good thing that I don't know these things when I'm driving through the city, because that means there's not all of these people jumping off roofs and all of these cars that are parking on the streets happening all the time. I will tell you that in my experience as a short-term renter and a property owner, I manage my properties better than anybody that's in the business of managing the properties. Also, I will say that as of 2000, I guess it's been about 2 or 3 years, all the cities that have been eliminating the short-term rentals have allowed at least, including Cathedral City most recently, have allowed at least the use of your home if you are living on the property. So they call it home sharing. And Rancho Mirage is not even considering that. That's when the owner stays on the property and may rent a room or may rent a casitas.
Kindly conclude your comments, please.
I'm sorry?
Would you kindly conclude your comments?
Okay, just in conclusion, I would like to see data. I would also like to see a town hall meeting where there's a two-way dialogue as opposed to just us coming up to the podium and making a statement. Thank you.
That was the last speaker card that I have. So is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this? Okay, I know you submitted one for the urgency ordinance. Do you want to speak on this one as well?
Do it on this one.
Okay, that's fine. Come on up.
Okay. That's my goof. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Elliott. I'm a long-term Rancho Mirage resident. I appreciate being here today, and good to see you, Mayor, and the council members. While I don't directly have a dog in this fight, I do have a serious concern on the way in which the council has handled the short-term rental issue. The council has had a pattern of making decisions without adequate input from the residents. Decisions are made and then sprung on the residents with little time to react. I believe this is by intention, unfortunately. Over 2 years ago, the council decided to allow In-N-Out to build a drive-through restaurant in Las Palmas Shopping Center. This came as a surprise to many, if not most, residents. Concerns are raised about the impact it would have on nearby homes as well as traffic congestion. These concerns were ignored, which resulted in a lawsuit to force In-N-Out to do a proper environmental impact study. Literally hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on litigation, which could have been avoided. Cleverly, the city had In-N-Out pay for the attorney fees. As you know, the project's now underway after a 2-year delay. The only winners in this fight were the attorneys. The controversy over short-term rentals is similar in that the decision appears to be one made unilaterally by the council without comprehensive or adequate input from the residents. The council has a pattern of obfuscation on controversial issues. Most recently, a judge ruled that the city violated the Brown Act for failing to properly notify the public about a meeting where In-N-Out was the subject. The appearance is that the council is tone deaf to any input or criticism once it has made a decision.
Having been a council member myself once in another town, I understand that obtaining public input can be tedious and often contentious. I realize that as a generalization, public attendance at meetings is generally very sparse. So the public has some responsibility to stay informed and participate. However, this does not mean that the council should act autocratically as if it was in a vacuum. Going forward, I recommend that the council creates task force to solicit public input on important issues. In addition, council members could have informal public meetings off campus, perhaps over coffee, to gain insight over what residents want. Another suggestion is to move the meeting times to 5 o'clock at night so more people can participate. Back to short-term rentals. I do believe there's a middle ground where the needs of proponents and opponents can be met, and I encourage you to take this correct and more difficult path to delay your decision. Thank you.
The next speaker is Hector Ayala. Hector Ayala.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I was not going to talk today. However, I would like to discuss the homes in La Paz that three neighbors have brought to that homes in La Paz. I can assure that nobody who is less than 40 years old will be coming to those properties. There will only be families at these homes. There will be a limit of 3 cars per home, no more than that. I completely understand that we cannot have so many cars. There will be a company which will do a security 24/7. We are not making this place into a party HOA or a party town like the neighbors are stating. There will be no chefs or vendors. When they refer to the website from Bravo, it says that there are chefs and things like that. Those are for the homes in Palm Springs. We understand that these houses in Rancho Mirage are on areas, is in an area of a very quiet neighborhood. We understand that, and we are not going to have any issues. I've told the neighbors they can talk to me if they have questions or concerns. Also, I have asked Tamaris Country Club, which is next door, if they had any questions, and one of the supervisors of the committee told me they have no problem at all. They will reach out to me if there is anything they need. This will be like any other HOA. Historically, there has never been any issues with vacation rentals on HOAs, and I think we can keep it that way. It supports our businesses without harming neighbors. There will be no issues with trash, cars, or noise at any time. I can assure you that. Just very quick for our city attorney, he was mentioning a lot of families who come here and they have kids on schools. I work on rentals. My kids, they go to Palm Valley School. So there are people that have, vacation rentals. They also take their kids here to schools. Another thing, very quick, you always talk about Cathedral City. Cathedral City gave, if I'm not mistaken, all of the owners 3 years to fade away, not just 9 months, 3 years. Besides that, I understand that your life, council members, is completely different. Most of you are retired. Most of you have wonderful homes, and I'm sure you live a wonderful life. But I would love if you can relate a little bit more to our cleaners, pool cleaners, managers, and many of us who work on rentals. Remember that we gotta work to make a living here as well, all right? Thank you so much, and my name is Hector Ayala. Any of the neighbors of the area can always contact me if they have questions, but I can assure you, rest in peace, that there will be no issues. Thank you.
Was there anyone else in the audience okay, come on up, and please state your name.
My name is Luz Delgadillo. I'm some of the schools here locally, and I have been managing properties for over 13 years, working locally, celebrating their 50 years next year. It's important to know that we vet our guests, we meet them in person, ensure that our client's home is managed and properly taken care of. We understand the city regulations and follow them to a T. There have never been any issues with guests. We make sure that they're all vetted, and we also know the importance of clients and neighbors and their livelihoods. So we just want to make sure that on that aspect, there's also lives that are at stake. As a business that is locally owned and operated, we are losing our livelihoods. Our housekeepers and our service providers are as well, and it's important that, you know, for me and a company that has been there and following all the rules, that we survive. And I definitely understand the concerns that are brought up, but there hasn't been any staff reports that will show properly how many complaints that there has been. And being someone that's local and can respond within 45 minutes is also important. So we strongly suggest that you do not ban them in communities, as it is important livelihood for many of the residents here in the Valley. Thank you.
Was there anyone else in the audience that wanted to speak? If not, we'll go to the remote audience. So anyone participating remotely can push *9 on their phone or click the raise hand button on Zoom if you want to let us know that you want to speak. The first speaker on Zoom is Tony Foster.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? You can. Okay, great. Thank you, City Council. I just wanted to talk about the proposed ban. It's nice that you have communicated this council meeting for the ban better than you did last time, along with giving some kind of a wind down period. When you banned the last short-term rentals, you had about 20 days to get your orders in order before you banned. I just want to share my story with short-term rentals. I was one of the victims of your ban earlier this year. And what brought us to the area was my mother-in-law lives in Rancho Mirage, is retired. And my wife and I would go down there and visit and rent short-term rentals in the neighborhood next to my mother-in-law with our kids. And that became very costly. And we want to spend as much time as we can with her. So we bought a home about 4 years ago and have been running a short-term rental up until this year, where as of this year, it's pretty much sat vacant as we're just doing long-term rentals. But we have also been able to spend 3 months down there we spend about a month to 3 months every year down there having the short-term rental and offsetting some of the cost. And so I don't think you should lump everyone in as a bad apple when it sounds like the complaint volumes are very, very low. And I understand that managing a program can have its challenges, but it looks like you've brought in enough revenue that you could potentially staff more to make this program successful for those that are good actors and not going against the grain, or being what some members have called people that are just trying to make a profit, because that's not what we were doing or are doing. So I oppose the ban, and I hope that you can share more data about the complaints. And I give back my time. Thanks so much.
The next speaker is Peter Orr. Peter, are you there?
We can't hear you, Peter, if you're talking. It shows you're unmuted. Are you there, Peter? All right, perhaps you could utilize the chat function, and maybe our IT staff can help you out while we move to the next speaker, and then we can come back to you, Peter.
Next speaker is Todd Stelnick.
Hi, good afternoon. This is actually Stephanie Stelnick and Todd Stelnick. We just didn't put our name, but my name is Stephanie Stelnick. My husband and I own 2 Airbnb rentals, short-term rentals in Rancho Mirage. One of them being my grandparents' house that's been in our family for 30 years that I purposely kept so other people can enjoy Rancho Mirage. And as a result of our short-term rentals, we have actually had 2 of our guests purchase other properties in Rancho Las Palmas Country Club because they enjoy the city of Rancho Mirage. They enjoy the short-term rental. They enjoyed staying into a home during a pandemic versus a hotel that issued other rules and regulations in regards to mask wearing, pool time. And so I think that the city is forgetting from a year ago how important these short-term rentals are for families to come and have a second home experience, but maybe can't afford it. I'm also a real estate attorney and wanted to touch on the city attorney's analysis of the Brown versus Mission Hills ruling. On September 14, 2021, the California Appellate Court actually ruled in favor of Brown, stating that these are bans and are invalid, actually. So according to the section, so the appellate court sided with Brown and found that minimum rental terms are rental prohibitions and rental restrictions. Therefore, a short-term rental ban would not apply to homeowners who purchased prior to the ban's adoption. The appellate court noted that the legislative history indicates that the legislator's intention was to ensure that owners maintain all rental and leasing rights they had at the time of this purchase. So I bring this to the council's attention in reviewing and trying to bring down this new ban, that there needs to be more discussed because it's actually in violation of the legislator intention behind Civil Code Section 4740. So there needs to be a grandfathering clause so everyone that has permits and has been issued should be able to continue the short-term rentals if you're going to even instill any type of ban. So I do agree with a lot of the people that have spoken that I think that you guys need to table this and actually research this and confirm that you guys are in compliance with the legislator, because it's just going to become a bigger issue with having to file lawsuits in order to bring it to the council's attention later. And I agree. I want to thank you for this time, and I appreciate that you've given this opportunity for us to speak. And if you need anything else, please, we again would ask you to table it, and we'll bring it in the next meeting if needed.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Nancy Williams.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I wanted to bring up the precedent cited in the staff report, Ewing versus Carmel by the Sea. It was held in that precedent that a city ordinance against STRs was constitutional, and that it was related to the interest in maintaining the residential character of a neighborhood. Well, I live at Rancho Las Palmas. Rancho Las Palmas is a resort community. Resort community, by its very nature, is a place where you go on vacation. People who live there full-time live there because they want to live amongst people who are on vacation. I live there half-time. The other half of the time, I have a short-term renter in my property. It helps offset the costs of my dual household. And I vet my residents. This is my home. I obviously vet the people who stay at my house. I'm not making a ton of money. I make just enough to offset the costs. And my weekend renters, for example, this weekend, there's a wedding at the Omni Resort. If they booked most of the guests have booked most of the rooms, and my house is being rented to the mother of the bride, her elderly grandmother who's handicapped, and her, the bride's the bride's sister and her infant child. That family wants to stay together in one place that can accommodate all of them and their special needs, and my house can do that. I also am very close to the resort, so they actually can walk to the wedding and back and forth. So I think that's wonderful. I think it's great that I get to take part of that celebration and that I can help them out. The resort would not have been able to accommodate that request, and that family would not have been able to rent a house for 30 days in order to accommodate that need. So I don't understand why the proposed ordinance only applies to, short-term renters. I live next door to 2 long-term renters, and the houses sit vacant most of the time. Those renters are only there for the season, January, February, March, and the houses sit empty. My house is occupied most of the time. I am there year-round, half-time. I eat in restaurants. I go to the spa. I act like I'm on vacation every day that I'm there. I'm spending money, as are my tenants. I am contributing to the Rancho Mirage the economic health of Rancho Mirage My long-term neighbors are not contributing much at all. So why are you picking on me? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Brad Anderson. Brad Anderson.
Hi, yes, Brad Anderson, City Rancho Mirage. Just a few topics I'd like to bring up. I'm opposed to this just because this is a tourism area. People do come here to enjoy themselves, and yes, I'm lucky enough to live here for a time, of course, but I don't. I think this is more of a private property issue, and the city's trying to regulate this. And again, it's all transparency. I said that earlier in another comment. And is it the city manager? Is it the legal counsel that's bringing this to the council today, or is it the city council member? That's something we should know. Because I want to mention that the Greater Palm Springs Tourism Board, I think it's, I believe they changed the name on that. But I know we have a city council member. I think it's the mayor that sits on that board. And of course, I think they wanted to regulate short-term renters with a tax or a bed tax too. And they may have done that, but my point is the city, all the cities are more concerned about putting or collecting bed tax. And they can do that through hotels and even this Porcupine Creek Retreat. This is really a short-term renter. That's going to be approved next, I guess. But I'm worried that the city council is acting too fast on this again. And let's see, I think you had 2 new code compliance. I know you spent a lot of money on software for code compliance, and I believe you had some outside company come in, like the legal counsel said. You had 2 other retained legal advice for this. So this has been, the city's been working on this for a while. But actually, I don't really understand. I know it's a valley-wide attack on short-term renters. Again, I have no skin in the game either. But again, it's private property rights. And I know, I think the city had a 30-year, when you had, remember that lawsuit that city regulated that people had to be 30 years old to rent? I think it was Harrison versus Rancho Mirage, but I'm not sure. I looked into that, and I could not find the 2 lawyers that brought that suit. And it's a funny thing, it was just feet away from all city legal counsel. Actually, they had a P.O. box at the Rancho Mirage, but they put it on the lawsuit as a suite. And I thought, well, that's kind of deceiving. So that's something people need to look at. And I have my own opinion. I think SB 9 and SB 10 may be the reason behind this. And that's where I could build another dwelling on my property and actually subdivide that. And the city can't do anything about it. So that's something people need to look into. And I think the city already did. And again, I'm opposed to this. Thank you.
The next speaker is Al Borges.
You have to unmute yourself, Al. You're still muted. Should be the lower left-hand corner. Still shows you're muted on our end. Go ahead, Al, and utilize the chat function, and perhaps our IT folks can walk you through the steps to unmute yourself, and we will move on to the next speaker, and then you can speak when you're able to unmute yourself. Thank you.
The next speaker is Melinda Luthen.
Thank you. Just one moment, please. Thank you. I represent vacation rental owners and neighbors of Rancho Mirage. It's an organization whose members are homeowners and concerned citizens of Rancho Mirage. We provided the City Council with written comments regarding this ordinance, but I do want to provide the following for the benefit of the public as well as the City Council. As an initial matter, during Mr. Cobden's comment or discussion of this item number 5, he mentioned the proposed STR moratorium item number 7, which is item number 7 on today's agenda. That matter right now is not before you, and I reserve the right to speak on that issue when item 7 is debated later in this meeting. I want to talk about what Mr. Hagerman stated regarding this ordinance, and he stated that it will that it will implement the policies of the city by amending the Rancho Mirage Municipal Code. The law is clear. Municipal codes and ordinances do not set city policies. Cities identify, adopt, and set and amend policies in the general plan. Municipal codes implement the policies of the city's general plan. And like it or not, the Rancho Mirage general plan clearly states that the city's policy is to foster new and unique businesses and for Rancho Mirage to become and remain a premier resort destination city. The city's general plan makes no mention of banning or phasing out STRs. The general plan has no policy of ensuring the residential character of the neighborhoods. Instead, it focuses on the fact that nearly 1/2 of the housing is comprised of vacation homes that are vacant for a portion of the year. I want to make a comment about the 86-page staff report and the documents related to this agenda item number 5. The volume of documents attached to a staff report do not equate to a valid justification for an ordinance. Mr. Cobden stated that the civil grand jury documents regarding the county somehow relates to the proposed STR ban in this ordinance, and it does not. Not one page of the documents attached to the staff report regard what is happening now here in Rancho Mirage. Last year, the city tried to justify the first round of STR bans with false data, claiming that permitted STRs cause nuisance. We absolutely debunked that, showing that any of the hotline calls, or the majority of the hotline calls, I think it was all but 9, regarded non-short-term rental matters, regarded things that were not violations, such as 3 girls playing in a pool, eating a bag of chips. The silence is deafening. There is no data to indicate then or now there is a problem. The staff had 86 pages or more, as many pages as it wanted to add these documents. It didn't. I want to mention CEQA really quickly without proffering any facts to indicate that the city is engaged in any environmental review. The staff report asked the council to find that the STR ban will have no negative impact on the environment. CEQA is to permit the public to participate in the understanding of the environmental impacts of the city's proposed regulations. CEQA mandates the city promulgate rules for implementing the environmental analysis of its projects. This city hasn't even bothered to promulgate these rules.
Kindly
It's ridiculous.
conclude your comments, please.
Let her continue. This is important. Other people yielded that time. Yeah. We'll yield my time.
Whatever the city thinks that it may do regarding banning future land uses or licenses, the law is clear. The Constitution of the United States and this state statute, and the Rancho Mirage Municipal Code itself prohibit the city from obliterating existing lawful land uses and permits. Mr. Cobden's claim that the city may lawfully implement a 6-month phase-out of its existing STRs is flat out wrong on the law. The city attorney informed you that the city is currently engaged in litigation regarding the city's first attempt to ban STRs. The city attorney bragged that his office has hired at least one new attorney to handle the litigation and admitted that the city has also hired an outside law firm to assist. Well, I'm sure that Mr. Quintanilla is happy his business is booming while attempting to decimate hundreds of small businesses in Rancho Mirage. It's important to note that the city is losing the litigation in spite of spending what is likely already many hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. I think the speaker during the non-agenda item regarding how the city chooses with whom it contracts as city attorney is an important matter. Mr. Quintanilla has consistently given the city council bad advice, which inevitably leads to litigation. Good for Mr. Quintanilla, bad for the city. To be clear, if the city council passes this unlawful ordinance, it will be challenged in court and stricken down. The city will not only pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to Mr. Quintanilla's law firm in defending the unlawful ordinance, the city will also have to pay the challenger's fees and costs. In anticipation of the council's attempt to confuse the identity of David and Goliath in this issue and comment that the threat of litigation is some meritless threat to bully the city council, let me be clear. We wish, hope, and expect our public servants to act in accordance with the law and to listen to their constituents and to make decisions that benefit the city. Ours is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. This ordinance is contrary to the city's general plan, violates the law, and is opposed by the people who have taken the time to voice their opinion. There's no basis for the council to suppose that there are lots of closet STR opponents that must be protected, or that STRs create anything from which the public needs protecting. Members of the public have the right and frankly the civic duty to challenge governmental abuse such as this. If the city council abuses its power, VRON must and will challenge the ordinance so that the people may right their governmental ships when they go wrong. In these challenging times, the city should be looking to spend taxpayer money responsibly. The city council members mentioned earlier so many important issues, such as earthquake preparedness, recycling, fire safety, and the like. There's so many ways the city could spend its money that can make a positive impact on the city. We urge the city not to adopt this ordinance and save the city taxpayer money so that it can spend it on something important rather than defending against an ordinance that is going to be stricken down because it is unlawful. Thank you.
The next speaker is Al Borges. Al Borges. Al Borges.
More.
You're still muted, Al. Okay, I'm going to move to the next, Peter Orr.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, finally. Sorry about the technical issues earlier. Appreciate your patience and let me back in. So, Peter Orr, I live own a home in the Rancho Las Palmas community. My wife and I bought it about a year ago in the middle of pandemic. One of the motivations for buying it was the ability when we were not at that home to, enjoy some revenue from the short-term rentals to help offset HOA fees, city taxes, things of that nature. So it definitely played in our decision on buying the property. We love Rancho Mirage. We go out there on a regular basis. 27 days and longer is not something we're going to do. I heard the Planning Commission make reference to, well, these owners can just rent it a month at a time and make their money, or sell the property and make their money. That's not what we want to do, right? We want to utilize your wonderful city and use our property. So we have 3-day minimum rentals. We screen our tenants. We've never had any complaints. I poll the neighbors on a regular basis. Everybody says they're polite, they're respectful of the property, they're respectful of the community of Rancho Las Palmas. So that's all gone well. We pay our permit fees. We pay our 10% monthly taxes to Rancho Mirage religiously. I did attend the Planning Commission meeting, virtually. I heard 18 public speakers speak on behalf of short-term rentals, 0 against. My tally today is 17 in support of short-term rentals, 4 against, with 3 of those 4 speaking specific to the La Paz issue, which I had no idea what that is. I don't know what it is, but I think that speaks to the will of the people, that there really doesn't seem to be an issue with short-term rentals. The statistics on the Rancho Mirage website speak to 0 permit suspensions and 0 revocations. So that tells me the law-abiding citizens like myself and my wife that are doing short-term rentals are not the issue. There's also no statistics on your website, although there's a spot for it related to complaints and citations. There's none listed. That tells me that data doesn't support the resolution that you're looking to potentially enact. Banning legal short-term rentals won't fix the problem of illegal short-term rentals. It just eliminates the funding to police those short-term rentals. $860,000 a year is what the Planning Commission suggested was the revenue from the permit fees and the taxes. You're going to have to find that revenue somewhere else in order to police the illegal short-term rentals when you lose that revenue. Our renters are vacationers. They're not transients. I know transients is more of a legal term, but they're vacationers from Canada, Northern California, Seattle, New York. They're families that want to rent a house. And I know I'm out of time. I'm going to keep going. They want to rent a house. Although the Omni Resort is beautiful, they want a home like they have at their normal. More act this ban, then they won't have a choice. All they can stay in is hotels and motels. That's not what these people want. Our vacationers also spend money at the golf courses, restaurants, stores, movie theaters, the river. Our house cleaner, we pay her about $400 to $500 a month. That will go away instantly if you enact this code. She counts on that to support her family. The lady who spoke earlier, I feel for that, right? Having to move into a one bedroom trailer because she can't afford to support her family anymore because of these bans. That's real. All right, that's real. I'm sure none of us would want to go through that sort of heartburn. So I'm asking the city council to please do not enact this code. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
The next speaker is Dorothy Gidloff. Dorothy Gidloff.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hi there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to allow me to speak today to the mayor and the council and everyone that is present. My husband and I purchased a residence in Rancho Las Palmas Country Club. We actually stayed in Mr. and Mrs. Hatfield's residence, and because of our stay there in that short-term rental, and because of how much we loved the area and the experiences we had, we actually purchased a home there, and we plan on retiring within the area in the next 6 months or so. During the time that we're not there, we have our residence rented out, and the kind folks at Vacation Rentals of the Desert do a fantastic job looking after our residents for us. Our HOA is one of the, I'm sure I don't have to let you guys know this, but they're one of the most fantastic in the area. They're phenomenally managed. There are no problems within the area at all. And if there are, they are tended to in a most amazing. The comments made by Mr. Hatfield, Mr. Montero, Cynthia, many of the others regarding the short-term rentals, I totally, completely agree with them wholeheartedly. I think there needs to be much more research done with respect to where things are. And I don't believe it is fair to paint us as people with the same brush as you would regarding the La Paz area. I just don't feel that that's a proper thing to do. The data certainly that I've seen doesn't support decisions that would be made by the council, and I'm really hoping that the council takes a long, good, hard look at this and that they discuss it further, and perhaps there should be a town hall meeting or two that could be held prior to the decision being made. I know it will really affect us in what we plan on doing regarding our retirement, and I know it's going to affect a lot of other people, staff, housekeeping people, etc. So these are things I'm just repeating from what everybody else has said here today. But again, please give it some consideration. Thank you so much.
We're going to take a 10-minute break. Anyone that wants to speak will have the opportunity when we return, whether it's in person or remotely. All right, we'll be back in session now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will reopen the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Christy, Will you continue with the speakers?
Yes, the next speaker is Tyler Hickman.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Hey, thank you very much for your time. And I jumped on a little bit late due to the fact I came off of an airline. But hey, after listening to what I've heard, after reviewing all of the testimony that came in on the planning and zoning, I came to the region a number of years ago on vacation in a short-term rental. I liked the region so much that I decided that this is where I wanted to retire. And recently in June, I just closed on a property in Rancho Las Palmas with the intent of spending more time there over the next 10 years until I retire. As a part of this, I need to rent my place to be able to afford this and to be able to continue visiting periodically. And, from what I've heard so far, I haven't heard from law enforcement. Has law enforcement, what percentage of their jobs is spent out patrolling this and with true problems out there versus how much time are they spending at hotels? How much time are they spending at bars? How much time are they spending out in the general public? Where is their time? And what percentage of their jobs is patrolling short-term rentals? And I suspect that it's very little. Next point is an economic impact study, and I believe this came up earlier. Anybody that is sitting on the city council, if you vote on this without having a true economic impact study, it's unconscionable. This is the foundation of what's going on here. The impact that this is going to have on the tax base and on people like myself and people that you have already heard from numerous times, the impact that it's going to have on people. And, I just spent close to $600,000 on a property in your city with the intent of using it the way intended. And now you're going to pull the rug out from under me. And this decision will send property prices plummeting, and it's going to cost me a lot of money. And, and I am just one person of many, many, many in your city. And I just ask that you take into account that. I ask that you delay a vote on this. I would like to hear from, and I believe each of you needs to hear from law enforcement on what the impact is there. And also, rather than spending your money defending this, because this is going to cost the city a ton of money in legal fees defending this, because the people that I've even heard before me, lawsuits are going to start coming at you. Take that money that you're going to spend defending this action and spend it on a true economic impact study so that you really have the understanding of what's going to happen. Because if this passes, you're going to have empty houses all over the city. Your restaurants are going to start emptying more. Your businesses, people are not going to spend as much money. And it is going to have a true measurable impact on the money that this city receives that keeps the streets clean. And I bought there because that place is clean and it's a great place to be. And I want to continue down the road that I'm on now and not have to sell my property and go somewhere else and have, more people will come. But if you ban short-term rentals, it's going to have a devastating effect.
Thank you for your comment.
The next speaker is Georgie Huff.
Hi, thank you. I assume you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. First, I just want to say that I agree with all of the speakers that are against this ban. And I just want to register that I'm against it. And I hope that you're all keeping a tally because it's overwhelmingly obvious that the speakers are against this. And then the last thing I want to say is that I spent a lot of time writing my letter and I sent it in yesterday, and I would like to be affirmed that the council actually read my letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to try one more time. We still have Al Borges showing up on the list. Al Borges, if you're able to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll move on. We have Joanne S.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Thank you, council members. My name is Joanne Sorrow. I own a vacation home in Rancho Mirage, which will be the home I eventually retire to. I had it as a short-term rental until the city's short-term rental changes in 2020. I wanted to keep it occupied when I wasn't there to discourage break-ins and squatters. One thing I'm frustrated by is that if there's a complaint about guests at my short-term rental, they'd be told to leave immediately. The problem would be taken care of immediately. If I have complaints about long-term lease tenants or have squatters, it would be far more difficult to get rid of them. The gentleman in the blue shirt who spoke earlier had many good points about two-way communication from the city and holding town halls. I'd like the city to share better data about the points it raises about short-term rentals before making a decision. People have brought up Cathedral City and Palm Desert, cities that have banned short-term rentals, but not Palm Springs, whose residents voted in 2018 to continue to allow them. How is Palm Springs handling short-term rentals? What can Rancho Mirage learn from them? What changes did they make to mitigate short-term rental issues? I'd really like to see the city try more ways to address issues that arise instead of banning them entirely. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
The next speaker shows up as just Brian.
Yes. My name is Brian Walsingham. I'm a resident of Rancho Mirage. My story is very similar to Tyler's and Joanne's. We bought our property in July of 2020. We did our due diligence with the city to see if the property qualified for an STR permit. It was not in a cluster. It wasn't in the district was still under 10%. At no time did the city say anything or indicate that they were considering banning short-term rentals. And they were very welcoming and enthusiastic about my application and the process. This factored heavily into our decision to purchase our property. The goal was to STR for the next 5 years before retiring full-time to the desert. The property was a huge part of our retirement plan, and we were excited to be part of Rancho Mirage. We were investing in our community, the neighborhood, the street, and our home. The house was empty for over a year before we purchased it, and it was basically a neighborhood eyesore. And like so many have said, STRs actually improve neighborhoods because the houses are so well kept. Not having STRs leaves many homes vacant, and vacant homes aren't good for neighborhoods or local businesses. STRs are not the enemy. Records show that the majority of the complaints don't even result in actions or fines. You can't use complaints against properties as data. The evidence and data shows there are few fines against properties. STRs have been a vital part of Rancho Mirage and many other desert communities, just like Joanne's mentioned. I mean, the success of Palm Springs is doing a great job, and they work very well with their short-term rentals. Tourism and residents in Rancho Mirage can and have coexisted through smart policies and best practices. I respectfully ask the City Council not to ban STRs so we can create like a win-win situation for neighbors, short-term rentals, local businesses, property owners, and the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last speaker.
All right, before we close the public testimony portion, we'll ask one more time, anyone else that hasn't spoken yet that wishes to speak on this item, you would hit the raise hand button on Zoom or *9 on your telephone. Anyone else in the audience that hasn't spoken yet that wishes to speak on this item? All right, seeing no more speakers, we will close the public testimony portion of the meeting. And I will ask our City Attorney, Michael Cobden, to make a few comments. Michael?
Thank you, Isaiah. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear about the city's authority to enact this ordinance. And I know one of the speakers brought up the Brown versus Mission Hills case, which both Mr. Hagerman and I mentioned in our introduction and our presentation of the item. And the caller had suggested that the Court of Appeal had stated bans on short-term rentals were not lawful or were in conflict with state statute. And I just want to be very clear that the Court of Appeal did in fact make that finding with respect to HOAs only. So the statute that the Court of Appeal was addressing, Civil Code Section 4740, only applies to HOA organizations, and it doesn't apply to the city at all. So in case there's any confusion on the council or in the public, that case stands for the proposition that HOAs cannot regulate short-term rentals. It does not say anything about the city's authority, but as I said before, it does underscore the need for city regulation because HOAs cannot do it themselves. And I know a number of members of the public commented on why don't we allow HOAs to regulate this? They can do it themselves. The fact of the matter is they can't, unless it's with respect to future owners of property within their boundaries. So that was the only clarification I really wanted to make there. Otherwise, the law is very clear and has been for decades that this is well within the city's authority, that this is based on preserving the residential character of our neighborhoods. And in fact, I would actually like to make one more point about the general plan. The general plan actually includes a number of policies which are furthered by this sort of a policy decision and ordinance, in particular land use goal number 1, which states that the city will be a resort residential community of desirable neighborhoods with a variety of community facilities and high quality developments. The land use policy 2.6, the city shall ensure privacy and safety for residential neighborhoods by providing adequate buffering and screening, particularly where neighborhoods adjoin or are integrated with commercial developments. Policy 3, the preservation and enhancement of predominantly low density, high quality residential character of Rancho Mirage. 3.1, preserving areas of existing residential development and surrounding lands that shall be planned in a manner that preserves neighborhood character and assures a consistent and compatible residential land use pattern. So this goes on and on. There's quite a lot that in the city's general plan policy that is furthered by this particular action. So in case the council or the public is concerned about the city's authority, this is well within the city's authority to enact this regulation and prohibition on short-term rentals. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Michael, very much. Before
question, Ted.
Yes, Michael, Richard has a question for you.
In the comments you just made on 47-40 regarding lawful statements, could you go through that one more time?
Sure. The Brown versus Montage at Mission Hills case, which we discussed at the outset and which a caller referenced again, that case is entirely based on a particular statute, Civil Code Section 4740. And that statute and the statutory scheme within which it is located applies to CIDs and HOAs. It applies to planned developments and conditions and restrictions on property that are imposed by such organizations. But that statute has no application to the city as a municipal legislative body.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Michael, this is Charlie.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
On the situation, the question, clarify the HOAs, because I talked to my president of our HOA yesterday, and he says January the 1st, when the governor signs this bill, that our HOAs and all HOAs will have absolutely no power to regulate short-term rentals, a year or 30 days or anything. So my question is, in your dissertation, did I understand it that the city's rules trump anything that an HOA can or cannot do, or that the city and the HOA can follow what the city puts in place?
For the most part, the answer to your first question is yes, the city's laws take precedence over the HOA's rules. Obviously, there are some exceptions, as there are in every aspect of the law, but for the most part, that is a true statement. And especially with respect to this particular ordinance in front of the council, if the council enacts this ordinance, then short-term rentals will be prohibited in all residential zones, well, frankly, in all zones in the city. And so whether or not an HOA chooses to allow or regulate or anything in between will be irrelevant because the city's law will take precedence.
Very, very good. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy that he will hear that from me tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. I will now ask for additional council comments. Dana? My wife and I.
Dana, that microphone. You got it.
My wife and I live in Rancho Mirage, as everybody here lives in Rancho Mirage. And our homes are in no different situation than your homes and people who are opposing the council moving forward. There were two letters that were submitted that I thought would be advantageous for those opposing the council's position, as per, I say its position, as laid out in the argument here today. This is a letter from Mr. Jim Gaube, G-A-U-B-E. He says, my wife and I lived in the Magnesia Falls Cove area of Rancho Mirage for close to 20 years. When we first moved to Rancho Mirage, short-term rentals in our community, for the most part, did not exist. Over the years, the number of short-term rentals has become out of control. As the number of rentals increased, the quality of life for us and our neighbors is gradually diminished. Since the council has taken measures to prohibit short-term rentals, our quality has greatly improved. Owners remain that attempt to challenge the rules and rent their homes out on a short-term basis in spite of the city's efforts to enforce the rules. Many are claiming that they are renting for a month, but when you study these individuals, their tenants have vacated in only a week or two, after only a week or two. The city has put in place measures to enforce rules pertaining to short-term rentals, and yet violations continued. The bottom line is that short-term rental landlords really don't have a clue as to who they are renting to. The reservations are made via the internet, and it is common that no verbal dialogue ever takes place between the parties. When the late night parties begin, there is virtually nothing an owner can do to prevent the violation from continuing. Short-term rentals are not compatible in residential neighborhoods. The council should be commended for its effort to abolish short-term rentals. On behalf of ourselves and many dozens of our neighbors, some who have lived here for over 40 years, we strongly encourage the council to continue with your efforts to ban short-term rentals throughout the city. It is a quality of life issue that every resident of Rancho Mirage should be able to enjoy.
Council member, if I could just note for the record that the letter you just read is part of the public record of the public letters that we received. There are copies available which include the letter that Councilmember Hobart just read out front, and it's also publicly available on our website.
Let me conclude with the following. If we support the short-term rental owners, we will stand idly by as the short-term rental industry destroys our residential communities. Two years from now, the finest 5 years from now, the 10 years from now, all of this will serve to modify what Rancho Mirage is, what Rancho Mirage has tried for decades to be, and continues to follow that same course of conduct. If short-term rentals are allowed to remain in the city will change, and it will not be the city even you thought you would be investing in. I'm sure I speak for the council when I say we came to Rancho Mirage to build the city, not to destroy it, nor cash cow for investors, with the effect being that residential communities are literally eliminated. Short-term rentals degrade a residential community, and that's what short-term rentals do in general. They benefit a few, the industry, some owners, but they do not benefit the people who reside in the communities have been denigrated by the existence of a complete change of personnel, from renters to permanent, from residents to rental folks. As an attorney, I urge those considering litigation to really review applicable law. Keep in mind that attorneys charge whether they win or lose. So when you hear people talk about, attorneys talk about the vigor with which they will attack the city, remember that the winning party may get your attorney's fees returned, theirs returned, and they also would be served upon the people who brought the litigation in the first place. And it's my absolute, honest-to-God opinion that the city would win this litigation. And while you might feel good making the fight, in the end, judges make rulings, and those rulings end litigation and no recovery of lost fees. I really urge you to keep those factors in mind, and I urge you to think of what Rancho Mirage would be if all of your brethren set out to make money in every nook and cranny and corner in our city where we could arguably put a house or an apartment or whatever to public use at a public cost, or a private cost, I should say. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Dana. Charlie, did you have something else you'd like to
Yes,
comment?
I will. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You know, a couple of statements that were made today, one struck me. And the statement is, government is for the people and by the people. Well, you know what? That works two ways. And the applause out here was one side of that quotation. And there is another side of that quotation which we have to take into consideration. And let's not forget that Rancho Mirage isn't the only city that is dealing with this situation in the community. Palm Desert, Indian Wells, Cathedral City. And I'm sure it will not be the last of those three that I just mentioned. And for what Dana said, I concur with what he's saying. In going through all the letters that I have gone through, and this one that I'm going to read is on the record. So bear with me. I think it answers a lot of questions that were brought up and a lot of insinuations that were spread. And I really felt the compassion for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I see the compassion on both sides of this. Yes, you put your money out there. Yes, you did it with good intentions. But there is that other side of for the people and by the people. Please remember that. And just because whatever happens here doesn't go to your side with threats of, well, when you're up for election again, ha, ha, ha. That's not the way it goes. This is America. This is the United States. For the people and by the people. So let me read this, if you will let me, please. It says, his name is Wes Rankins, and I'm a resident of Rancho Mirage for over a year now, moving from Palm Springs. I was so delighted to hear that the Planning Commission voted to recommend a ban on short-term rentals in the city of Rancho Mirage. We purchased our home in Rancho Mirage last year after dealing with short-term rentals and problems that came with them in Palm Springs. It was out of control. I'll stop there, and I think somebody said there's no problems in Palm Springs, I quote. We purchased our home in Rancho Mirage last year after dealing with short-term rentals and problems that came with them in Palm Springs. It was out of control. We didn't know who our neighbors were, and the renters treated and rented property and the surrounding areas just like trash. So after months of research and spending time in various cities, in the valley, we were pleased with Rancho Mirage. Rancho Mirage is the utopia of world-class residential living. The city is beautiful and serene. There's a calmness that comes over me every time I drive home from work in Palm Springs that I cannot describe to you. We purchased in Rancho Mirage Country Club. We were so excited, my wife and I, that we noticed people that didn't live in the community doing things to our shared golf course with the Omni Hotel, like beer pong on the greens, reckless and loud parties of those who didn't live there, and even people bringing groups of people in the community for weekend parties. Now, mind you, it was stated here, people that live there and have homes there have never heard of anything going on. But I digress and I start. We spoke with our HOA, who advised us that, yes, STRs were permitted in our private community. We then did research on vacation rentals in Rancho Mirage and found that our own private community has the largest amount of STRs in the city of Rancho Mirage. Surprise, surprise. Issues with STRs. We submitted videos that I took, photos, and written accounts of incidences created by the STRs. We then noticed that most of the STRs within the Rancho Las Palmas Country Club wasn't registered with the city of Rancho Mirage as required by the city of Rancho Mirage. Again, we approached our HOA and we combined and went through our records, and we found nothing about STRs being permitted within our private community. What we discovered is that most STRs, the owners didn't even live in the community. that they would only visit for a long weekend but rented out their homes majority of the time. Believe me, it is frustrating to know that we thought we had left the nuisance of SDRs behind us when we moved from Palm Springs to Rancho Mirage, to find that is just as bad in Rancho Mirage. Let me just stop there and think. They sold their house, they moved, they lost money, they came here and thought they were doing the right thing. How many of us have had that in our lives? But we did something and thought, oh my God, what did I do? There are people that drive golf carts that are left for use with their kids under 16 driving them who are renting. The SDRs allow their pets to defecate on the green on our property without picking it up. When we come home from work on Fridays, we can barely get into our private gate with all the temporary passes being issued to SDRs in our community. Rancho Mirage is world known for its class of living, and SDRs just do not fit into Rancho Mirage image, as Dana referred to. I implore the council to vote to ban SDRs in Rancho Mirage, including HOAs. If not a ban, then rental should be no less than 30 days. You have people who have come and purchased homes to use as a business, making a lot of money. And that's what we're really hearing on the what side of justice is there. They, however, don't pay for the extra resources that it takes to correct the behavior of their SDRs. They just collect revenue is generated from their SDRs. They are not active in our community, nor do they care. Rancho Mirage should not allow or follow in the way of Palm Springs with SDRs, as they have gotten completely out of control. And I can also say on that, I have many friends who live in Rancho Mirage, who their neighborhoods and their homes have turned into complete nightmares, and they don't know what to do. Anybody ever had that 2 in the morning, you have kids screaming Marco Polo in the pool, or wild music going on? I have. Rancho Mirage is where there is a community, quality of living, in a place where home ownership is rewarded instead of being downgraded because of SDRs. Again, I would ask that our city council vote in favor to ban SDRs in Rancho Mirage, including HOAs. It adds no value to our wonderful city. Thank you for your time, and if you need further comment, please feel free to contact me. Thank you again, Wes Rankins. It just, for me, capulated all of the other side of what you did not hear today. All of the other side that a lot of you don't live in and go through. So just remember, government for the people, by the people. So as was said here today, and again I quote Dana, we have to look at both sides of this. We have to look, as he said, the future of Rancho Mirage. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. What's it going to be? Is it going to be where you would be afraid? Let me just say another thing. Do you know that there are realtors, when you say, I want to look at a house and blah, 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 and then they say, do you care if there is vacation rentals? Or the question is, does the house next door, anybody on this block, have vacation rentals? You know what they say, the realtors? Well, I don't know that.
You don't know.
Well, I have no idea. This is what happened to people. Could happen to you in a different circumstance. I digress, but I thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Charlie.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one quick comment. The letter that the Mayor Pro Tem read is also part of the bill on the city's website and out front.
All right, thank you. Iris, do you have some comments you'd like to make?
I do. And to follow up a little bit of what Charlie talked about, as far as people leaving Palm Springs because of STRs, let me just show you a couple of things that I've gathered over the past couple of years because this has been an ongoing issue, not only in our Coachella Valley, but across our nation. And now it's a lot of places across the globe. This happens to say, I left Palm Springs because of STVRs. I'd rather have neighbors. The next one says, Airbnb suspends at least 30 houses. Cities on the hunt for vacation rentals. And one that I thought was particularly interesting is, how much do Coachella Valley cities spend on short-term rental services? This was in the Desert Sun, May 30th of 2021. So you can look it up, you can read it. They quoted everything. And I think you'd find it particularly interesting. And what I found even more interesting is that even the Wall Street Journal is writing articles about the problems of STRs. But in addition to that, I would also add that a lot of the comments today that you heard talk about how issues that are brought to the City Council fall on deaf ears. Well, I don't think they fall on deaf ears. We listen carefully. And over the last 10 years or more, we have tried to accommodate STRs. We have tried to fit them in. We have tried to hear what they were saying, hear what the neighbors were saying, change rules, implement new regulations so that we could keep them and so that people could have a home that they had hoped to retire in, but they wanted to make some money so they could keep that home. But we've received lots of comments. I particularly have received a lot of comments through the years. When I've gone to events, we received a lot of letters, received comments from STR owners. They all say we never had any problems. The money that we make pays for our costs of the house. We love Rancho Mirage. It's the best run city. It's safe, it's tranquil. My home is a great investment, and my STR is a great investment property. We have the best amenities, we have a lot of free activities, we have residential character. And a lot of people say, but if you change these rules, I won't be able to run my business anymore. And that's a key word, run my business. For all those that are not aware, Cathedral City voters decided against STRs. If you rent in Morningside and Rancho Mirage, you have to rent for 60 days. If you rent at Desert Island, you have to rent for 90 days. The Springs requires days. Sunrise Country Club requires 30 days. But there's also some things that people don't talk about, although somebody did mention here today that he was getting $4,000 a month for his rental. City is enormous, was an enormous market until they voted to make it illegal, to make Airbnb's representation there illegal. And yet there are still over 1,000 advertisements online, which tells you that this is such a huge money-making investment and business that they sometimes would rather pay the fines as long as they can keep collecting the rents. And people say that their renters are perfect, that nobody ever complains. Well, there are a lot of people that do complain, and they complain quietly. A lot of people don't complain because they fear retaliation. A lot of people feel that having these short-term rentals has eliminated homes, and it's eliminated homes for long-term renters, people who want to rent for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months. There's not a whole lot of available, apparently, because the money is so great with the short-term rentals. It's eliminated homes from the market for people who want to buy homes, especially people who have families and who have saved their money, who wanted to retire here, but now they can't afford here. A lot of people have multiple STRs. A lot of people are LLCs. A lot of people have these STRs strictly for investment purposes. Some people have never even stepped into their home. They just kind of collect their checks and take them to the bank. And you have to wonder how many of these people have actually gone to their neighbors and said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor. I'd like to get to know you a little bit. Let me give you my phone number in case there's a problem. You can call me. I don't want you to be fearful of the people I'm renting to because I'm really vetting them. And I don't want you to be fearful of letting your children or your grandchildren play out in front." So many have said that they could not buy or operate their STR without the income they get from their rentals. One person said 5 weekends pay for half of his yearly costs. So while STR owners are bringing the checks to their banks, residents are inflicted with all the bad side effects of their neighbors, while their neighbors are having great financial investments. A lot of benefits come from being an STR owner. And while STR owners are renting motels in residential neighborhoods and bringing in revolving strangers, they don't need to comply with any of the rules and regulations forced on hotels. They don't need to comply with the ADA requirements. They don't have to be handicap accessible. They don't have to have a wheelchair ramp, which can be very costly and require some extra land. They don't have to worry about putting special apparatus for people that are handicapped to get in and out of the pools. There's no security. There's no health inspection. And they don't have to worry about smoking prohibitions, including cigars and marijuana. And a lot of people say, "Hey, I've got an STR, I'm doing okay. I don't think," I keep telling people that I don't get any complaints. So why don't you just fix whatever the problems are? And we've tried. We have really tried. But how do you fix piles of trash left out in front for days and very often blown by the wind or picked through by the crows? How do you fix drunken behavior with people vomiting in the street? How do you fix barking dogs next door or dogs pooping on your property or in your driveway? And then if you don't step on it, sometimes you drive over it. How do you fix noisy visitors arriving after midnight, talking loud, slamming car doors? They're on vacation. They don't mean to be loud, but they've already started their vacation. They want to have fun, and they can't help talking loud because this is just part of having a good time. How do you fix strangers running across your lawn and through your landscaping? How do you fix it when you want to use your own backyard, but there's cigar smoke and marijuana smoke wafting into your property? And how do you convince your neighborhood residents that the revolving strangers that are going to be in the house next door or across street are really safe, and you don't have to worry about your children or your grandchildren being out in front playing or riding a bicycle? All these renters are on vacation, and they're entitled to have a good time. They've paid a lot of money and want the freedom to do what they want when they want. But where do you draw the line? Many renters won't stay in hotels because there are too many rules and restrictions. They can't talk loud. They can't smoke in most places. There's certain pool hours that regulate when they can use the pool. They can't park close to their room. And I understand that when people are on vacation, they want to have a good time. One large homeowner said that over the last 10 years, they've had over 3,000 tourists at their home, along with many events. For one STR owner, the STR ordinance represents an annual revenue loss in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It also means millions in lost value, according to them, and this is related to their property's use. Someone who spoke on Twitter or Facebook, said that if you have the means to own a second or third or fourth home, you are really not in a position in life to speak about unfairness or having your rights taken away. You are all the definition of entitled. Home ownership is a dream many people aren't ever able to achieve. Because of people like all of you buying up every house you see, driving up the housing market and looking to turn a fast profit that only you benefit from. Anyway, a lot has been said. I don't think I have to go on any further. But I wish I could please everyone. I think we all wish we could please everyone. That's why we were elected. But we were elected to take care of our residents, our businesses. We were elected so that when people say that residential neighborhoods have turned into hotel zones, and many are unregulated hotels, that these homes should not be cash registers for absentee landlords. We listen. And we're sympathetic to all those who came here with good intentions, but not everything works out the way we all want when we want it to. So when we were elected, we were committed to taking care of our residents, their rights. We love our visitors, we welcome them, we depend on them, and that's why we continue to provide the best of the best. We hope they will continue to enjoy our library, our observatory, our amphitheater. We hope they'll enjoy our smooth rubberized streets, our Writers' Festival, our synchronized traffic signals, our bicycle paths, our beautiful parks, and all the other amenities that we are able to provide, and almost all of them are free of charge. We want them to come and enjoy, but we want to protect the rights of everyone we can. And we want to make sure that our residents are living in a neighborhood, not in a hotel zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Richard, do you have some additional comments?
Ted, what else is there to say at this point?
I know that.
I tell you, between Charlie and Dana and Iris, we have heard three great reasons why we do not want to have short-term rentals. You know, when it really gets down to it, what are we all here for? It's quality of life. And everything we do is to improve that. And even Jim Gobby sent a letter to Dana, and Jim said, you know, that quality of life was the best issue that he could think of. And I think we'll all continue to work towards that. Certainly, all of us at that time going to improve the quality of life for our residents. So I think we just have to continue to look forward. We're not going to give up that direction. You may want to think that We're going to change for some reason, but for 20 years I've been on the council, and for 20 years I focused on what's the best for my residents. And the best is what we're getting right now, and it will continue to do that. So good presentation, all of you. I know it's up to Ted now, but just remember, Rancho Mirage, quality of life, one and the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Well spoken. Yes, I think we set the bar high, and the objective is to keep it high. There's no question about that. Is there anybody else before I ask for a motion? Is any other comments to make of any kind? I think we pretty much have covered that. With that, I'll ask for a motion regarding item number 5 and the first reading of amending chapter.
If I may, Mayor, I would be delighted to read it. That the City Council introduce and read by title only ordinance number next in order, amending Chapter 17-30, Standards and Uses of Title 17 Zoning of the Rancho Mirage Municipal Code to prohibit short-term rentals and repealing Chapter 3.25, Short-Term Rentals of Title 3, Revenue and Finance.
Second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is going to be presented by Kofi Antebaum, our Director of Administrative Services, regarding resolution number 2021 next in order, calling an election on the levy of a special tax. Kofi, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is to hold a public hearing on annexation number 184 into CFD number 1. This is the second and final step in the city's standard process for annexations into CFD number 1. The first step was considered and approved on September 2nd, 2021. The territory proposed for annexation is located within the existing Porcupine Creek Estate and comprises of a portion of 4 parcels totaling approximately 190.037 acres. At the conclusion of today's public hearing, provided written notice have not been filed, and in the absence of majority protest, the Council may consider adoption of the attached resolution, calling an election, declaring the results of the election, determining the validity of prior proceedings, approving the annexation of the territory, and directing recording of an amendment to the notice of special tax lien. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kofi. Are there any written comments, Christie, regarding this item?
So
No, we have no speaker cards.
We will go ahead and open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing. So any member of the public that wishes to speak on this item, now is the time to do so. If you are participating remotely, you would hit the raise hand button on Zoom or *9 on your telephone. Christy, you said we have no speaker cards?
No speaker cards.
Anyone here in the audience that didn't fill out a speaker card that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, seeing that, let's go to our remote audience. And Brad Anderson, go ahead.
Hi, Brad Anderson, City of Rancho Mirage. I'm sorry, I haven't talked to anybody today. So I live on Ferber Drive, and I'm against this. I don't know if you're going to release exactly how many votes you had, probably 1, but because that's an issue with the sidewalks and the driveway going through residential neighborhoods. I think it should be allowed, but knowing how the city operates now, without no doubts, I can imagine this will be approved. But that's all I have. I'm opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else that wishes to speak, we will close the public testimony portion of the meeting, and we'll ask the city clerk for the election results.
The ballot for the 191 eligible votes was received on September 25th, 2021, and was in favor. Therefore, votes cast in favor equal 100% of total votes cast.
Okay, thank you. Are there any council comments regarding this item? I see none. May I have a motion regarding this issue?
Well, I'll make a motion that the city council adopt resolution number 2021 next in order, calling on election on leveling a special tax within the area proposed to be annexed to Community Facilities District Number 1, Annexation Number 184, declaring the election results, approving the annexation of the territory, and directing the recoordination of the amendment of the notice of special tax lien.
You want a second on that?
Yes.
Second on that?
Get a second? Second. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
The next item will be the urgency ordinance regarding the issuance of a moratorium on issuance of short-term rental certificates throughout the city, and that will be presented by Michael Cobden. Michael, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a fairly straightforward item. It is sort of a companion ordinance to the short-term rental ordinance that the council discussed earlier. Just to clarify, in response to one of the comments made before, this is a different moratorium from the one that is included in the short-term rental ordinance itself. And if one were to read the ordinance that was discussed in the prior item carefully, it includes its own moratorium that begins on the effective date of that ordinance whenever the city council chooses to adopt it on second reading. The purpose of the urgency ordinance is to establish a moratorium beginning immediately. And the government code provides for this option for the council if an urgency arises, which includes the potential for a use which is incompatible with a land use or a zoning proposal that is currently before the city, then the city can also make certain findings, which are included in the urgency ordinance itself, that there is an urgency to place a moratorium on future uses of that kind while the city considers the policy of a more permanent restriction or regulation. And here, the purpose of this ordinance is to establish an immediate moratorium on further issuance of short-term rental certificates under the current ordinance 1174. And I want to be very clear that this moratorium in the urgency ordinance would only apply to certificates that are being applied for under the existing short-term rental ordinance in 3.25 of the municipal code. So it doesn't apply to any other potential applications. It doesn't apply anything beyond that. It really is a very narrow urgency ordinance to prevent a sudden influx of applications in anticipation of the council's potential regulation or ban of short-term rentals through the ordinance previously discussed. This would avoid that sudden rush of applications, which would then drain, again, staff time to process and deal with and then enforce those, as well as all the other enforcement issues they're already being somewhat overburdened by. So that's the function of this urgency ordinance. It's completely different, but it does function in tandem with the other ordinance discussed at tonight's meeting. I hope that was a clear explanation of its purpose and function and how it operates, but I'm happy to address any concerns or questions the council might have about those issues.
Thank you, Michael. Let's go ahead and open up the public comment period for this item. If any member of the public wishes to speak on this item, now is the time to do so. If you're participating remotely, you would use the raise hand button on Zoom or *9 on your telephone. Christy, do we have any speaker cards?
We do not, but I think someone does want to speak.
Come on up.
Councilmember Townsend, I was so sorry to hear about your health. I hope that this moratorium helps reduce any impact that may be in regards to, I'm assuming that's why this moratorium, the influx, I don't know, don't worry about it. Ms. Montrich, I had a question for you. For what happens when your neighbor moves in next to you and is smoking cigars? Are they going to also be banned from utilizing their backyards for short-term rentals? Your things that you're coming up with, a couple of the council members today are pointing out things that individual homeowners can also do. Individual homeowners can come up and they can jump off their roofs if they want to. Long-term renters can have the same options. So there's a very large bone of contention that I see with your argument. And so I just wanted to bring that to attention. So thank you very much for your time. I yield the rest of it to Ms. Luthen.
Ma'am? Anyone else here in person? Come on up.
I had health issues?
Is he a lawyer?
I guess so.
Is he a lawyer?
Hi, my name is Shelby Deneen Shandstrom. I just wanted to talk to the City Council. I think the blatant show of privilege by several of you today is disgusting. And you say you are listening, but specifically Iris, you continually present everyone involved in short-term rentals as wealthy investors, and you refuse to acknowledge the rest of us who support and make a living off of the industry. And I just urge you to look towards the future of Rancho Mirage, because I think you've made it very clear that you are enjoying the serenity here, and I think it is for only a certain type of person, and I think it's important to look to the future, because what you're doing with these types of laws and not taking everyone into consideration, I'm sorry, it's, I know that I'm not being very clear. Iris. You're doing fine. Thank you. I wasn't prepared to speak today, but I felt like I needed to so that I could sleep better tonight. But you said homeownership is a privilege, and with the ban in January of 2020 that went into effect, my small management company that I had built came to an end, and with that, homeownership came off the table for me and my husband. And I wanted Rancho Mirage to be a place that I could even switch gears and try something new, because it is a beautiful place, but I hope that it can be a more inclusive place in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else here in person?
Again, I just wanted to say I was listening to Iris Smotrich and the litany of reasons why short-term rentals bad idea. And I just was thinking as you were reading those and reading the articles and sourcing the articles, where's the documentation? Where are the numbers that show where those situations apply here? Again, as a realtor, driving through this wonderful community, which everybody up until today, October 7th, is still saying it's a wonderful community. And how can it be so wonderful if you have such awfulness going on? If you have people jumping off roofs, smoking cigars and joints, cars parking everywhere, I see none of that. I have owned the house in Rancho Mirage for 2 years. In that 2-year time, and I need to say this as a realtor, when another homeowner alluded to the fact that his property properties sit vacant or empty, unoccupied actually, then they're targets for really bad elements. And they are. They're not only targets for really bad elements, but if I bought a house, and it's a second home for me, I have a home in Los Angeles, and when I'm not here, that house is going to sit empty. It doesn't generate anything for anybody. But what it does do is cause deterioration of the property. I have many more issues with that property because it sat empty than because it was not being used. So it's twofold. If you want your properties to be well maintained, and they are well maintained, if a short-term rental owner wants to rent, it's got to be an attractive property. The only time I have seen a complaint in all of this time, lady and gentleman, is when the city and the police were called to my house while I was giving my birthday party, 70. So that tells you the level of people that are at my party. In the daytime, I had a jazz trio playing, and the jazz trio was a trio that has been commended by the city of Rancho Mirage. You can go on YouTube and see Eve Evans being commended by. Somebody complained. They didn't complain because that music was too loud, because when the city officers came by, they said, no, I don't see any problem with the music. I don't see any problem with anything. And I said, it's my house, but what if it wasn't my house? What if it was one of my 30-day rentals? Would you be calling the city and the sheriff on them just because they're a rental? So I think that we have a misconception. We have a fixed image of what all this means. Partiers, this, that, and the other. Whether it's occurring or not. That is what we're faced with. You have in your heads, this is horrible, this is bad, this makes our community look bad. But again, it looks beautiful to me. My neighbor has parties all the time. She lives there full time. She has parties. That's how I met her. She was inviting me to one of her parties. I said, have you ever had the city called on you? She said, no, never. And she talked to the officers. And then after that, the city officers left, the sheriff showed up, got another call, 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, a jazz trio playing. My birthday party, 70th birthday. How horrible is that? Does that fit the same mold? Does that show up in the articles you're sourcing? No. It's the only complaint I've ever gotten on any property I've ever rented. My own self in Rancho Mirage, where everybody wants everything to be so wonderful that you can't even enjoy your own house for yourself. You go so far to the other side, you can't even enjoy your own house for yourself. And I just think that if you're really listening to us, if you really are, you heard a lot this morning or the early afternoon, you would at least pretend to be listening and defer the vote and say, well, let's look into it. Let's get some more numbers to show all this stuff we're talking about applies to Rancho Mirage. You don't do that. No, we're going to vote anyway. And you bring out all of this litany of stuff that justifies short-term rental bad everywhere, except it's not happening like that here. I don't see it. That's all I have to say. I don't expect it to change any minds, but that's an impression that this city left on me, and I own in Cathedral City and Palm Springs. And Rancho Mirage, as nice as it is, it's very restricted. I don't feel like I own I feel like I'm in an HOA and that you guys are the board. That's how I feel. And I bought in a public area specifically not to feel that way. But here we are. Thank you. And I just want to say, for me personally, my house generates enough income that 30, whatever minimum required the state lets you allow. It actually makes more money for me, maybe not some of the other people, because I don't pay the cleaning people in and out. I have a person in for a month, 2 people. I regulate it, so it doesn't hurt my income. And you don't stop me from buying a house and renting it long term, and that's denying some other homeowner, potential homeowner. So, the arguments don't really make sense to me. But if you're going to do what you're going to do, I guess we just have to address it when it comes time to vote again, like we have to do national. We have to do local. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Anyone else here in person that hasn't spoken yet that wishes to speak on this item? All right, we will go to our remote audience. Melinda Luthen.
3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I've spoken once already. Regarding the other matter, you know that I represent VRON. Before I get into the comments regarding this issue, I just want to make a couple of comments on the City Council's comments regarding item number 5. First and foremost, the City Council members read some letters, written comments. They were all anti-short-term rentals. I'm wondering why the council didn't behave in a more balanced way and read also pro-short-term rental letters. It's almost laughable what the City Council were stating, tales that are fanciful and ridiculous. Only short-term rental guests allow their dogs to defecate. Only short-term rental guests slam doors. Only short-term rental guests have a good time, run across lawns, and the only risks to children are caused by short-term rental guests. The other thing, it's okay to take away the constitutional rights of the rich. The rich are not entitled to constitutional rights. It just, to me, it's confounding. I don't even understand how it is that one council member can say that he speaks for the entire council. Sounds like a Brown Act violation to me. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the comment from the City Council member who stated that if the city is, for some fantastic reason, this council member thought that they would, and these lawsuits, that the challenger will have to pay the city's attorney's fees. I just want to let you know, I don't think that this City Council member is an attorney. Will not have to pay the city's fees. The city will pay those fees regardless. There's no provision for the city to recoup its fees should it succeed. I just want to talk a little bit about this moratorium. And for those of you who have followed this issue since 2020, I apologize for contributing to your feelings of waking up on Groundhog's Day at 6 in the morning and hearing Sonny and Cher sing Babe. At the risk of further dating myself, for those of you who have not followed this issue for long, you may ask yourself, how did we get here? Sit down. It's a long story that I'm going to try to make short. In December 2020, the city adopted Ordinance 1174, which unlawfully obliterated more than 120 STRs in Rancho Mirage. VRON filed suit against the city, asking the court to enjoin Ordinance 1174 and issue a judgment invalidating it. The city hired the city attorney's office to defend the suit full fang, which quickly began spending taxpayer dollars, mounting meritless defenses, and engaging in extreme stall tactics. After months of addressing the city's meritless arguments, on July 23rd, the judge finally issued an order enjoining the city from processing the STR permit applications of VRON's members using the criteria of Ordinance 1174, pending the outcome of the lawsuit. Almost immediately afterwards, the city attorney filed an appeal of the order. And instead of abiding by the order pending the outcome of the appeal, the city then hired an appellate law firm whose attorneys filed a meritless petition with the Court of Appeal to stay the order, which the appellate court swiftly denied. Instead of accepting the Court of Appeal's denial of the city's request for stay and abiding by the order, the city's appellate counsel then filed a pie-in-the-sky petition with the California Supreme Court to stay the order, which unsurprisingly was swiftly denied. Instead of accepting the California Supreme Court's denial of the stay, accepting the Court of Appeal's denial of the stay, and abiding by the order, the city pretended that it need not abide by it. VRON patiently waited for the city to exhaust its options, and after all of its futile efforts were shot down by the appellate courts, I informed the city that if it continued to ignore the order, VRON would request the court to find the city to be in contempt and punish the city and the employees responsible for processing the STR permits for their contemptuous conduct. The city attorney and the city's appellate attorney ignored my warnings. On September 29th, VRON requested the court issue an order hailing into court the city and the employees to show cause as to why they should not be held in contempt and punished. 2 days later, on October 1st, the city staff posted the agenda for this meeting, which includes the proposed moratorium. This is the city's futile attempt to make an end run around the court's July 23rd order. My comments made on item 5 apply to the moratorium, including the vested rights, failure to comply with CEQA, and so forth. In addition, there's absolutely no urgency that justifies an urgency ordinance, and even if there were, the city failed to provide adequate notice of this meeting. It is the entire ordinance, should it pass, it will be void. Also, it doesn't have a sunset date, which is required. It permanently, apparently, strikes out any part of Chapter 3.25 that purportedly conflicts with the moratorium. One of the council members said that there's another part of the Gettysburg Address, quote, for the people, by the people. The rest of that just regards paying honor to those who died during the Civil War, making sure that our democracy lives on forever. Although not in the Gettysburg Address on January 26, 1830, before the United States Senate, Massachusetts Senator Daniel Webster described the government as made for the people, made by the people, and answerable to the people. Making money is not a sin. It's not illegal or morally wrong. The city fostered short-term rentals. It created a permitting process and encouraged short-term rentals. By doing so, it limited its power to ban them now. The moratorium will be challenged if it is passed. The city will be faced with 3 lawsuits regarding short-term rental ordinances. Each and every one of them is blatantly illegal. And sorry, City Council, even if you are successful, which you won't be, you are still on the hook for the exorbitant amount of fees that you're going to pay to your attorneys in raising meritless defenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other?
Yeah, Brad Anderson is next.
Yes, hi, thanks. I was attempting to unmute. But anyway, yes, hi, Brad Anderson, City Rancho Mirage, Ferber Drive. And just the earlier city comments or city council statements on item 5 was just torture. But we all knew this would go this way, so, or I did anyway. But on the urgency ordinance, it isn't an urgency. I mean, is it an urgency? I can't pronounce it correctly, but and by doing this or by passing or even considering passing this at this stage, when you have 30 days for the other one to come to second reading for the next city council meeting, it shows intent to harm and financially or cause distress, and that's just, is that the city of Rancho Mirage? Is that what you guys do now? I mean, I'm worried. I'm really worried for the future of Rancho Mirage, and yeah, the city council member that spoke about litigation, and if you litigate it, you will pay, financially. And then you had another city council member that stated that 20 years on the council, which is true, and they're not going to change their mind, So it's almost like threats. It really is. I think the city of La Quinta city mayor would consider that a threat, but that's just a joke. I'm only kidding. But I hate to see that strong arm tactics being used in the city of Rancho Mirage, because it used to be a really great city, and I think it still can be. But this is no way to operate a city, and that's my own opinion. Not that I could do any better myself, but I think if you have an urgency clause on commercial businesses that you say they are, I have a commercial business right next door to me, which Mr. Kite and Mr. Wire support to the city for over a decade. And I've yet to get that business out of the area. And when I do complain, I have retaliation actions taken against me from the city, and I can prove that. So, but anyway, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm sure, I'm going to have to say this. Please do not retaliate against me for speaking at these meetings. But I would like to speak on closed session item 1 and item 2 when that comes available. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
The next speaker is Brian Walsingham.
Yes, this is Brian Walsingham. It just seemed very obvious that the council had already made up their mind when giving their comments and showing articles and reading letters. And again, it was such a biased opinion without reading letters of, I'm sure you got many letters for short-term rentals. And secondly, one of the councilmen mentioned that, having homes, second homes and third homes is if you can afford that, then you shouldn't have to have short-term rentals, and that real estate, that home ownership is some sort of elitist privilege or something. And real estate in its basic right is a business. It's a contract, and everybody that owns a home, whether it's a home or a condo or a mobile home or whatever it is, real estate is a business. We all understand that. And so an STR is just part of that real estate contract. And then speaking of elitism, also is this ban on short-term rentals. Feels like there was some talk about like elitism of home ownership if you own more than a certain amount of homes. And that's coming from an all-white board that's trying to keep out many diverse people that come here to visit. I mean, speak of elitism, that's where the mirror should be, people should take a look at that. It just seems unconscionable that the board is getting rid of STRs for the reasons that they stated. It just seems so unfair. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No one else has indicated they wish to speak, so we'll close the public comment period on this item.
All right, that's closed.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I asked Michael Cobden to respond to.
Please do. Michael, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make one thing very clear in response to one of the comments we just heard, which alleged that this particular urgency ordinance was that had something to do with the ongoing litigation and dispute that the city has with VRON and the upcoming hearing about obeying the court's July 23rd order. This urgency moratorium has nothing whatsoever to do with that hearing or with the court's July 23rd order. This moratorium only applies to applications for short-term rentals being processed under Ordinance 1174. So to the extent that there's any confusion with the public or with the council, whatever happens with respect to the ongoing litigation and dispute over the court's order dated July 23rd, that is a completely separate issue. And whatever comes of that, this urgency ordinance and moratorium will have absolutely no effect on the outcome of that dispute that we currently have ongoing. I don't want to get too much more into that because it's a separate issue, but I do want to make clear that nothing about this urgency ordinance functions as or is intended to be what the caller described as an end run around that process. That process is wholly distinct. So I just wanted to make that very clear for the record and for the public and the council.
Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate the clarification. Before I ask for a motion, I'll ask one last time if any council member has any additional comments. No. All right. That being said, may I hear a motion regarding the urgency ordinance, please?
Well, I will, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that the City Council adopt urgency ordinance number next in order, establishing a moratorium on issues of short-term rental certifications throughout the city pending council consideration of an ordinance prohibiting such uses, which will help eliminate one, nuisance conditions that are commonly caused by and associated with STR operations. 2, divisions of staff time and resources to review and process new applications. 3, increase code enforcement demands to monitor new STR properties and enforce existing regulations. And 4, conditions that would harm the residential character of the city's residential neighborhoods and potentially present public health and safety concerns arising from transient commercial uses in residential neighborhoods.
All right, and is there a second on that motion, please? All right, there's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
And that motion is now approved. The last item on today's agenda is the periodic review of development agreements. Number 8. And that's being presented by Pilar Lopez, our associate planner.
Actually, Mayor, I'm going to take this one, if you don't mind.
I don't think I have any choice now.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, as the mayor indicated, this is a periodic review of development agreements. Every year around this time, staff takes inventory of the existing development agreements that are in place around the city. And basically what we do is just review them to make sure that the property owners are in compliance with the terms and conditions stated in those development agreements. There are 9 existing development agreements that are subject to this year's annual review, and I am happy to report that they are all in good standing. So that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. We'll go ahead and open up the public comment period on this item. If any member of the public wishes to comment, now is the time to do so. You would hit the raised hand button on Zoom or *9 on your telephone. Christy, do we have any speaker cards?
We do not.
Okay. Anyone here in the audience that didn't fill out a speaker card that wishes to speak? Seeing no one come forward, we'll go to our remote audience. And we have no public comments on this item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Isaiah. For the sake of brevity, I will make a motion that the City Council find that the subject developers and/or property owners are currently in compliance with the terms and conditions of the following 9 development agreements: Rancho Mirage Self-Storage, Weston Vacation Club, 111 Plaza, McKenna, Stonebridge, Del Webb, Ferrari, Carefield Assisted Living, the Residences at Rancho Mirage Country Club, and Section 31 specific. Is there a second, please?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
And that has now been approved. And our learned counsel has been waiting for a number of hours here, who will tell us what is going to be covered in the closed session when we recess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier, there's some discussion about these scams. They try to scam me. I realize that I have a grandchild in Nigeria and one in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, not just you. So the council at this point is going to recess into closed session to confer with the city attorney regarding existing litigation known as vacation rental owners and neighbors of Rancho Mirage Vacation Rentals LLC et al. Versus City of Rancho Mirage. That's pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. The council will also recess into closed session to confer with its labor negotiator, as the city manager, Isaiah Hagerman. That's pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6A, and that's regarding the MOU that we have with the Rancho Mirage Employees Association. And those are the 2 items.
All right, I thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we did have somebody request to make a comment on the closed session.
Okay.
Brad Anderson, go ahead.
Hi again, Brad Anderson, City Rancho Mirage. I'll just go ahead and go item 1 and then follow with number 2 really quick, if that's okay. And the first one, of course, is the city of Rancho Mirage has been litigated with the vacation renter and neighbors of Rancho Mirage and Rancho Mirage Vacation Renters LLC, I believe. But I normally would say, please just hurry up and get done with this and put it behind the city and move on. But seeing today's show, I would say that that's probably not likely because of money to be made by our city councilor. So I would, but anyway, I would just hope that you can go ahead and somehow compromise and move on from that. And item number 2, of course, is the city manager working with the current employment union. What is that called? Rancho Mirage Employment Association. And I remember when that was originated, and I think Mr. Hobart worked on that, and of course the legal counselor, to have that and establish that union or that contract between the employees and the city. And of course, we all know, or I know, the city manager got a 4% pay raise this last year in an area where nobody got any pay at all. So I would hope that you can go ahead and be as generous with the employees that actually do the work at City Hall and in the field, probably city streets, and give everybody a 4% raise, and let's move on from that too, because that's been kind of hanging out. And also, I would hopefully that I think the city should really report out, meaning the councilors should go ahead and adjourn the meetings and not have the city manager do it, because I think that's probably a Brown Act violation. But anyway, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go into recess. Thank you.
It is 6:28, and the city council took no reportable action in closed session. This meeting is adjourned.